what you looking for?
Pen or a pencil? The one
Are
that,
there none here? Here, I've got some.
up there's some over here.
Art took them.
No, there's one.
That's weird. Somebody pillaged the
Yeah.
guys.
I go from like having a bunch of pens and then they all disappear.
Oh, that's a nice
because
one.
I loan them to people and I never see them again, you know?
That's sort of the nature of the thing, is you either have it around 15 or else you don't have it.
Gail, is there water? Do you have water?
Dibs on the Cliff Bar, I saw it.
I'm gonna
I started putting them in my
counsel for that.
figured if we're gonna go until 11:30, I might as well have something.
Oh, I bet, I'm
Ready?
ready after 10 o'clock. Because I get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock.
That's my commissioner comment later.
Nothing is ever just one.
I know, but
thing.
there's such a
Oh, I know. Well, it's just like with urbanism. I'm so sorry, but I'm so sick of the urbanism. You lead us down to.
Tricia?
Shocked to hear you
That's
say
not
that.
real planning.
Yeah, let's get here to the urban
That's
core.
fine.
What?
Yeah.
Right here in this picture.
Oh.
Paul carried the
You probably
picture
already
from
read it,
his home.
Charlie.
Well, I might have skimmed it. One
Oh.
of the many things in my inbox.
Sell you some water if you want some.
Oh. Chip, you know that Frank's not coming tonight.
Yes. I think we got a quorum on everything.
I don't think anyone's recused on anything.
For Pete's.
Pete's, we're losing three, but we still have four. Or two. Patty.
Three? Who are we losing? We're losing
Patty and
Paul.
Paul.
Patty and who
So we
else?
still have four.
Four. People who drink Pete's.
I don't drink it.
Oh, that's right.
Swear I don't.
I own stock in it.
Figure it out with Charlie.
It's privately held.
Hey, Charlie. Is Patty within 500 feet? Is Patty within?
I didn't think.
You're out anyway.
Just for that joke, you're out.
But
We don't want your kind.
I didn't
Because
even think
you
about
look the
that.
whole building up where your unit.
Yeah, I could be. I knew Paul was going out, so it's just gonna be.
Yeah, I think so.
I did that this morning. Freedom.
Nothing but the best for our
We're gonna leave Saturday. Oh, injured. I didn't see you could get. Oh well, fine shade.
That's right, that's Absolutely. Absolutely. I did get that.
You guys ready, Charlie? Let's call to order the Planning Commission meeting of April 26, 2007. Can I have a roll call, please, Charlie?
Commissioner Cardoza?
Here.
Commissioner Germain?
Here.
Commissioner Hoff?
Here.
Commissioner Jeffrey?
Here.
Vice Chair Donaldson?
Here.
Chair Martin?
Here.
And Commissioner Flores has an excused absence this evening, so we have a quorum of 6 commissioners.
Great. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under law, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item on the agenda is public comments. Is there anyone wishing to speak on an item not on tonight's agenda? This is your opportunity to address the commission. Seeing no one, we'll go to the next item, which is action recap of the March 22nd, 2007 meeting. Are there any comments on the, or clarifications or corrections on the minutes?
Yes, I have
Go ahead,
one.
Patty.
On page 3, under Commissioner Jeffrey, second sentence should read, she said a service entrance should be included on the east side of the parking of the building. Oh God, I can't read my writing here, sorry about that. Allows for easy access to deliver artwork. So delete the second sentence after she said and add a service entrance should be included on the east side of the building that allows for easy access to deliver artwork.
I actually have a correction on page 6, under the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10th line regarding my comments on the need for an ordinance for the older neighborhoods. I think my reference was with regard to both the Triangle and the North Side neighborhoods, not simply the Triangle neighborhood. I could make
wait a
that
minute, I'm still
correction.
getting Commissioner Jeffrey's
Okay.
comment. Where are you now?
Page 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth paragraph from the bottom. First sentence, after the word triangle, insert the word and north side.
Okay, got it.
Any other corrections? Can I have a motion with those revisions?
Move to approve with those revisions.
And a second?
I'll second it.
So, motion by Commissioner Jeffrey and second by Cardozo without objection. Next item on the agenda is Director's Report. Charlie?
Okay, a number of things to tell you about. First of all, the City Council, they have met 2 times since your last meeting, on April 3rd and April 17th. On April 3rd, at the request of the Sierra Club, they introduced an ordinance to reduce the building permit fees for installing solar panels on owner-occupied single-family homes to a flat fee of $250. That ordinance passed on April 17th and will take effect May 17th. They also heard a report on the proposed pedestrian and bike bridge adjacent to the Ashby-Shellmount interchange. On April 17th, the council had a study session on the Doyle-Hollis Park, and that will be coming to you for approval at your next meeting in May. The Redevelopment Agency approved a lot line adjustment related to the Oak Walk project, and that's related to actually the next item on the agenda, so I'll be telling you more about that in a few minutes. And the council approved the Ocean Avenue Lofts project, which you may recall you were deadlocked on, I believe, at your last meeting on a 3-3 vote. They approved that 4-0 with Councilmember Fricke abstaining. In news from the general plan update, the steering committee held a special meeting on Monday, April 9th, and that was a dry run for the workshops, the community workshops, which included running through the opening remarks and testing the materials and activities, and the materials were fine-tuned as a result of that. We have now held 2 of those community workshops, which I believe some of you have attended. We had good attendance. They've been quite successful. We had one this last Monday at the middle school on 61st Street, and then just last night at Anna Yates. The third and final workshop is this coming Saturday, April 23rd, at the Police Department headquarters on Powell Street. The doors will open at 9:30 in the morning, and the workshop will be from 10 to 1, and we hope to see many of you there. The next General Plan Steering Committee meeting after that will be on Tuesday, May 22nd, where the workshops will be reviewed and the next steps in the process will be discussed. The Park Avenue District Advisory Committee is going to hold its next regular quarterly meeting on Wednesday, May 9th. The committee will hear an update of projects that are happening in the district and status of the implementing ordinance, which has now been adopted. Also, the Park Avenue Plan has been nominated for an award from the northern section of the California chapter of APA, and we will find out on May 11th whether or not we receive that award. The award dinner is May 18th, and members of the committee have been invited to attend that dinner, hopefully to celebrate our winning the award. We'll see. I've been asked to report back to you on what to do about complaints about construction activity. And so I'd like to take just a couple of minutes to talk about that tonight. Any citizen that comes to you with a complaint or that you hear about should be referred to me. They should contact me, and I will have the building inspector contact the general contractor for the project and inform them of the problem and direct them to correct it. 98% of the time, this results in immediate compliance. If necessary, we can take further action, including up to issuing a stop work order for the project. That really gets their attention, but normally that kind of a step isn't necessary. After I discussed this with Chair Martin this afternoon, an example of this situation occurred. Unbeknownst to me that this was going to happen, but I got a call later this afternoon about construction activity occurring outside of normal approved hours at the Avenue 64 project, the former Pinnacle project at 64th and Christie. So I asked the building official to have the building inspector talk to the general contractor about it. Within an hour, I was informed that the conversation had occurred. The general contractor had promised that no work will occur in the future outside of the approved hours of Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And this is typical of how promptly we are usually able to respond to these kinds of concerns. So direct them to us, and we'll take care of it
Thanks,
to
Charlie.
the extent that we can. I have one other thing I want to mention to you,
Okay.
and that is the APA conference. I attended the annual National Planning Conference that was in Philadelphia last week. As usual, there was lots of good information, although several of the sessions were canceled due to the bad weather they were having. One session in particular that was quite interesting was one called True Urbanism by a planner by the name of Mark Hinshaw, who has written this great book. It talks about the trend of people moving back into downtown areas. I'm getting a copy of his PowerPoint presentation, and I would love to show it to you at some point in the future. I think you'll really enjoy it. Just a brief observation about planning in Philadelphia. There appears to be little or no planning done at the municipal level. It's all done by private neighborhood and civic groups, and the projects are reviewed by neighborhood organizations, and then they are sent downtown for a rubber stamp by approval by the Zoning Board of Adjustment. It seems like the first and last comprehensive plan that was done for Philadelphia was done by William Penn in 1683. Due to a groundswell of public pressure, there is now a ballot initiative on their May 8th election to require the zoning ordinance to be rewritten for the first time in 40 years. But the citizens had to ask for that. The city council wouldn't do it on their own. I also visited Atlantic City, Cape May, New Jersey, and New York City. I'm not going to tell you all about that, but I just want to make a couple of comments. Atlantic City is a very strange place with poverty and decay side by side with glitzy casinos. It's just very strange. Cape May is an old seaside resort town at the very southern tip of New Jersey, which is full of Victorian cottages, many of which are bigger than my house. And the whole town has largely been restored through the efforts of a local preservation group, so that the whole town is now listed on the National Register. It's a really beautiful little town with lots of gorgeous restored Victorian houses. I visited, in New York, I visited Manhattan and Brooklyn. I'm not going to tell you, I mean, you know, there's lots to say about that, but I just want to make one observation, which is that I saw lots of kids, lots of children on the streets, in the parks, all over, seeming to be growing up very happily in the big city. So I was quite surprised to see so many children everywhere I went. And this is right in downtown Manhattan and Brooklyn, right across the river. I also observed several very successful parks built on top of freeways in both Philadelphia and New York City that I took some pictures of, and I'd love to show you. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Charlie. Any questions? The next item on the agenda, public hearings. We have quite a few public hearings tonight, and what we're going to do in each hearing is have a presentation from staff, and then we'll have a presentation from the applicant, and then we will open the public hearing to comment from anyone who wants to comment on the project. We're going to ask you to limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes, and out in the link on the other side of the wall with the clock, there is a agenda packet that should have all the staff reports and maps. If you don't have that and want to take a look at it, you're welcome to look at that in advance of hearing that particular public hearing item. We ask that you leave that binder there for everyone to share and look at. The first item on the public hearing agenda is the Oak Walk vesting tentative map. And Charlie, I think that's yours.
This is mine. This is a vesting tentative map to re-subdivide a 1.73 acre property from 11 lots to 6 lots in conjunction with the previously approved Oak Walk mixed-use project. This covers the western two-thirds of the block bounded by San Pablo Avenue, 40th Street, 41st Street, and Adeline. Just to orient you on the map here, this at the bottom is 40th Street. This is San Pablo Avenue on the left, 41st Street across the top, and Adeline Street over here on the right. And it's the western two-thirds of that block. Just a little background. The Oak Walk project was approved by the Planning Commission on October 27th, 2005. It's a mixed-use residential commercial development. The Planning Commission's approval included relocation of an existing fourplex from 1077 41st Street to the corner of 40th and Adeline. That is currently that house, that duplex is right here, a fourplex rather, is right here, and it will be moving over here to this corner. It also included, your approval also included demolition of 9 existing houses along 41st Street and their replacement with 3 detached duplex structures which contained a total of 6 residential townhouse units. This decision was appealed to the City Council, and on February 7th, 2006, the Council denied the appeal and confirmed the Planning Commission's approval, but with the stipulation that the 6 duplex units along 41st Street be eliminated and that 5 of the existing houses be relocated and renovated in their place. As I'm sure you recall, the Commission approved the design review and variance application for the relocation and renovation of those houses last December 14th. So the project sponsor has now come forward with an application for a vesting tentative map which will re-subdivide this property to accommodate the approved project, including the 5 relocated houses along 41st Street and the relocated duplex at 40th and Adeline Streets. The relocated duplex is going to be on this site over here. Currently, the area that I've outlined in orange is part of the Oak Walk site. So it includes all of this that's outlined in yellow plus this little orange property here. The redevelopment agency owns this little green parcel. I don't know if it looks like green, but it's outlined in green over here. In order to combine these two into a single parcel for the fourplex, this line here is going to be moved, so you can see this arrow here, over to here. So it's a lot line adjustment to move this line over to here and make this parcel bigger, basically, make it this big, and subtract this area out of the overall Oak Walk project site. Because the redevelopment agency is one of the owners of the parcels whose lines are being adjusted, they had to concur in this lot line adjustment, and they did that at their last meeting on April 17th. Staff will now proceed to process this lot line adjustment administratively, now that we have both property owners' concurrence. A condition of approval of this vesting tentative map that we're recommending is that the final map will not be recorded until after this lot line adjustment has been recorded. So after this lot line adjustment is done, and the property will then include just this area outlined in yellow, it will be subdivided into 6 lots. Lot number 1 will be this large lot that will include the 3 new buildings, the surface parking lot, and the open space parcel or area over here on 41st Street. And lots 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 will be the single-family home lots for the relocated houses fronting on 41st Street. Staff is recommending approval of this vesting tentative map with the conditions that are attached to your staff report. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to respond to any questions you may have.
Any questions for Charlie? Charlie, in the southeast corner where the fourplex is going, I see a footprint there. Is that the
That's the fourplex.
likely footprint of the relocated building?
Yes, that's what you approved.
So it always touched on the podium building? I thought
No.
there used to be parking or garage or something on the west side of the building.
No,
Or
there-
access or something.
There is a 5-foot separation here because the new building will have a 5-foot setback from the property line, but the fourplex will be right up against the property line.
And every iteration we've seen had that arrangement?
Yes, it did.
Okay, so the parking for the fourplex is
Parking
going
for
to
the
be
fourplex is underneath the fourplex. There'd
directly
be
perpendicular to
driveway
40.
here
Okay.
and 2 spaces on either side, so 4 spaces in the basement level of the fourplex.
Okay, and then up to the lots along 41st Street, there's an extension to the podium, which you explained to me earlier today, is, that.
Here
and then,
and here.
That's for the, quote, bioswale?
Well, it's not a bioswale, it's a planter.
Treatment
Yeah,
area?
it's for stormwater treatment, but it's a
Okay.
raised planter area,
So that's for the water coming off of the podium.
correct.
And what happens to it after it goes through the treatment zone? Has that been defined
I'm
yet?
not sure I'm qualified to respond to that. Peter Schultz Allen is our expert in that
Okay.
area.
No,
but
I'm just curious.
He's satisfied with the plan that they've come up with.
And we now have plans that show stairways in the back of each of these rehabilitated.
Yes, and there will be
Buildings.
doors, I believe 2 doors that go directly into the parking garage from these houses, and there will be reserved, I didn't go into all this detail in my staff presentation, but it's in your staff report. There will be reserved parking spaces for the houses in the garage, 4 in the garage, and they'll be close to the doors, 1 for each of these 4 houses. And then over in the surface parking lot, there will be 4 more spaces, 1 for this house and 3 for visitors of the houses.
So I can't read the scale, but between the stairway in the back and the podium wall, what are we talking about? 4 feet for the backyard on lots?
Probably something like that.
4, 5, 6.
This
and 2.
is the site plan that was approved by the Planning Commission in December. Well, with some minor modifications for the planters. Also, this house, you may recall, was formerly stuck out a little bit into the public right-of-way. That's been pulled back.
Okay. Any other questions for Charlie before?
Yeah.
Charlie, remind me, who owns the little park in the
This?
in the northeast corner?
Bay Rock?
And they will maintain it?
Yes,
Okay.
but it will be open to the public.
Will it be part of the condominium?
I guess so. I assume it'll be owned by the homeowners association.
But you've included a no-build easement over that to make
Yes,
sure it's not developed
it's on
in the
here.
future.
It's on the
Right,
vesting tentative map.
good.
Charlie, then we can presume then that the 2 planters that are going to be used for stormwater purposes would be maintained by the homeowners association as well?
Yes, it's on their property.
Thank you.
Although I think the owners of these houses could probably, at least they'll have visual access to it, if not physical.
So they don't include a fence on the top of
No.
the planter?
No,
Is
no.
there a restriction prohibiting a fence on top of that?
There was you may recall when you approved this in December, there was a condition about fencing.
Right,
And the fencing was shown on the landscape plan for these houses.
Right.
And basically your condition says fencing shall be as shown on the landscape plan, and there's no fencing back
Right.
there.
right. And that's still the case?
Yes.
Okay. Other questions? Thanks, Charlie. Is the applicant here and do they wish to speak to this?
I'll just introduce myself, but I don't have any presentation. I'm here for questions. My name is Katie Ford, and I've been managing the project through building permits and through the process. So the question about it's a filtration planter, and it does go to the storm as all
Storm
of the
drains?
drainage is storm
Okay.
drain.
Thanks, Katie. With that, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to speak to this item? This is your opportunity. Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Comments?
I'd move approval.
I second.
Any discussion before we have a vote?
We've been through this an awful lot.
I have,
Yeah.
yeah. I guess I'd like to say that I appreciate the no-build easement. I'm still disappointed about the backyard of these rehabbed units. It's just inadequate. So I want to express that one more time before we take a vote.
Ready?
We're ready.
Commissioner Cardoza,
Aye.
Commissioner Germain, Commissioner Hoff,
Aye.
Commissioner Jeffrey,
Aye.
Vice Chair Donaldson,
Aye.
and Chair Martin.
I'm going to vote no again. And we're going to see this one other time? This particular application? Do we have one other process that goes through the commission?
so.
Okay.
There will be a condominium map at some point where Lot 1 will be divided into, however many condominium units it will be, but that's a one-lot, what we refer to as a one-lot subdivision, and that's typically handled at a staff level.
Okay. Thanks, Charlie. Next item on the agenda is the floor area ratio increase at 1207 to 1209 54th Street. And that item actually has been continued. Is that correct, Charlie? After that is the Pete's office expansion at 1400 Park Avenue. I think, Diana, that's your...
And I need to recuse myself as I live within 500 feet of the Pete's operation.
Thanks, Patty.
No, I need to recuse myself because I drink Pete's coffee. Because I live within 500 feet.
You live really close.
And you drink this coffee.
Okay. Good evening, what's left of the commission.
That sounds like a vow.
Peace Coffee will be moving their roasting operations to Alameda in about a month. And they would like to expand their offices into the existing roasting space. They're located on Park Avenue between Horton and Holden Streets in the IL Industrial Zone. They're surrounded by the Artist Co-op to the north, and PG&E and some warehouse buildings and offices on Holden Street, and the Bank of Marks Tilt-Up, which they've been renting space in, on the other side of Horton Street, and a variety of buildings across Park Avenue. They're proposing, they have an existing office space on Park Avenue, and they're proposing to expand into the roasting facility and then do some of their parking in what's now the roasting facility. Conditions of approval require them to build a sidewalk on Horton Street per the Park Avenue District Plan standards, and not shown on this drawing, an easement for a public walkway across the north part of the lot from Holden to Horton Street. So this is a larger plan of the same thing. There is parking now on their property off Holden Street, head-in parking, which is going to come up later. Pete's is proposing to replace the windows on Holden and Horton Streets with windows similar to the ones on Park Avenue in the middle. These are the ones that are on Park Avenue. These are the existing ones, and these are the proposed windows. This drawing shows a clerestory that's not visible in the photo just because it's an elevation. It is not a change. And this is just part of the existing conditions. This shows those clerestories from the back. This is the Horton Street elevation. And it shows the windows existing and proposed, and then there's a detail of the windows that they're proposing, and they want to make thermal efficient, energy efficient windows. That's partly why they want to do the replacement. This replacement window is the same as 4 of the small windows that exist now. So here's a perspective of the existing windows and a simulation of the new windows, and they would have empty mullions back in the back where the parking garage is. This is a map of the surrounding buildings.
Those are empty mullions to the new window form, or is that
The
mullion
new
to
window form is
okay.
what they're proposing. So the whole side is consistent.
Consistent, okay.
Yeah. So this is just a sort of a location map for surrounding buildings, and we have slightly larger photos of them. Linen Life has similar windows. 1401 Park doesn't have any yet. The aluminum lofts have small mullions, but the windows are shaped different. 1447 has similar windows. The tilt-up has a few windows that are actually similar to those. Sherwin-Williams has a real mix of windows. Some are like that, some are not. The Artist Co-op has some that are similar. The Victorian, of course, the windows are very different. And this little brick warehouse across the street has similar windows. So there are buildings around Pete's that have similar windows to the existing ones, and others that don't have windows in all different sizes and shapes. So that's all the pictures. So about the walkway, we're proposing a 16-foot easement across the north end of the lot from Horton to Holden. After the staff report went out, staff decided that the easement should be open 24 hours a day, which is different from what's in the staff report. The office hours, the offices will generally be 9 to 5, but every once in a while someone will work late. So the piece didn't really want to be restricted to that. In terms of use permit findings, the conversion would increase PM peak trips by about 37 trips, but the office peak would be later than the peak for the industrial people around there, so that would spread out the traffic over a couple of hours. Most of the traffic would be cars. The only large trucks might be like office supplies or furniture or stuff like that. Their office space requires 105 parking spaces, and they are provided not counting the spaces on Holden Street, because if there's a sidewalk in the future, those spaces won't be usable. And the conditions require a 20-foot curb cut for the driveway. It's shown 16 feet on the plan, which wasn't enough, and to make it so that the trucks can get to the trash and recycling area. In terms of design review findings, there's a down ramp to a loading dock now. That would be filled in so the whole parking lot would be level. And there needs to be design review thoughts about the windows. When this was taken to the Park Avenue District Committee for comment, one of the committee members who lives in the Artist Co-op was saying that those windows are really special and they help to make Holden Street a special place, and he thought they should either retain the windows, which are of course thermally not adequate, or replace them with something of the same size. There is, I found out after the staff report went out, a company that makes extruded aluminum mullions that look like old steel mullions, but the person from the company said generally they cost about 3 times what replacing with larger windows and flat aluminum mullions would cost. So it's some bucks to do that. And the windows on the surrounding buildings do vary in size and shape, so staff feels that the proposed windows would not be out of place. In terms of conformity to the Park Avenue District Plan, the proposal helps to preserve the district's historic brick industrial character by reusing the building, and it helps to encourage a compatible mix of uses by replacing the industrial use that has so plagued the Artist Co-op with an office use that would not, and helps to improve the streets by building a sidewalk on Horton Street. In terms of the Park Avenue District design guidelines, the proposed windows would still have a repetitive window pattern covering at least 1/3 of the elevation on the streets, a wide, long window area, multi-pane windows, clear panes, and dark anodized aluminum frames. In terms of approval of partial demolition of a Tier 2 architecturally significant buildings, that is those old windows, the adaptive reuse of the building would help to maintain district character. Replica energy-efficient windows would be very expensive. The number of pedestrians in the district would increase because of the change to a denser use. And the building windows would be more consistent between the Park Avenue frontage and the sides if the windows were changed. There are a couple of new conditions of approval that the applicant has asked for in the last couple of days. One is that the city shall maintain the public walkway from Horton to Holden Street across the north side. That the original condition said that the applicant would maintain them, which actually the city would want to maintain them.
That's the pedestrian walkway connecting the two streets, okay?
Public Works said if there's going to be a walkway, Public Works wants to maintain it. And the owners of this property shall not be required to pay for placing utility wires underground on Horton Street unless such payment is required in connection with future Pete's improvements. We have a letter from the Artist Co-op, which I think you have in front of you, and they have 3 requests, all of which I think are pretty easy to do. one is about their existing fence. They want to make sure it's tall enough. I'm not quite sure what that means. And they want to make sure their plantings are not harmed. So the existing fence could remain. They want to make sure that the lights are shaded so that light is directed down and not into the windows. And I actually talked to the two people that have windows at the back, and they were fine with it as long as that happens. And they also are requesting public parking on Holden Street. Evidently, years and years ago, before Pete's moved in, the public was allowed to park on that private property in that head-in parking. So they would either like to have that restored or have parallel parking, which would, of course, put the private parking out of commission. So that's their letter. That concludes my report. I can answer questions, and we have Todd right here representing Pete's, and we have Robert McGillis from Banta Architects. And I think Todd wants to make, and we have Jim Grimes, who's Pete's manager. So they'd like to make a really quick presentation.
We have questions?
I have one question. I'm a little confused. Is this walkway connecting Holden and Horton? That goes through the parking lot?
Yeah, I think.
It doesn't seem to be delineated.
In the
on
last day or two, they have produced a drawing of this.
Okay, good.
At my request.
I have a question for you.
Go ahead, Art.
Would you go over that Holden Street parking situation again? I didn't quite follow you.
Let me put the drawing.
Is it now parking on private property?
Yeah, it looks like it's on-street parking, but it's not. Okay. Have the overhead again? Well, yeah.
There's a 20-foot setback there, Art.
So it's hard to tell because there's no sidewalks, and the crosswalk actually is painted as if it were public property. But the property line is like through the bumpers of the cars that are parked head-in on Holden Street.
Can you focus that a little, please, Diana? Just a little bit. I know my eyesight's going, but
And what is the proposal?
yeah. Maybe that's all the better. Well, that's not better.
There was just a
There. Okay, that's good.
There was just a
Good as we're going to
How
get.
they park head into the building on private property? Is that-
Right now, people are parking head-in on private property.
And what is the proposal?
What the co-op, the proposal from Pete's is to continue using that until such time as the city builds a sidewalk behind it, in which case they wouldn't be able to use it anymore, so they're not counting it as meeting their parking requirement, but they still want to use it. The co-op would like to see the public allowed to park there, or that parking closed off and parallel parking put on the street.
Right now, it's not available to the public.
Right.
Parking.
Right now, it's just Pete's.
And Pete's is proposing that it remain just Pete's.
I think so.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks, Diana. Sure. So would the applicant like to make a presentation?
First of all, pleased to be here. My name's Jim Grimes. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Pete's. Pete's has quite a history. As I went back and started to investigate the records of Pete's, we've been in 3 different locations roasting coffee and having our office locations here. We're currently located at 1400 Park, and we've been there since 1996, which is the building that we're talking about. We've gone through a lot of growth during that period of time. We outgrew our capacity, which necessitated the move of our roasting plant and distribution operation, but created an opportunity to remain in Emeryville by expanding our office into that vacated space. We have been for a long time, and we are an Emeryville company, and we like being here. And with the planned improvements in the Park Avenue district, we think this is a good fit for that. With the agreement of the landlord, we're here tonight to request your permission to consolidate our offices under one location. We're currently, as we've grown over the years, we have 3 other office locations in Emeryville. So the plan here is to try to bring all our Pete's office employees back into one building and one facility. So I'm going to turn it over to Todd and our team for a quick presentation on the details associated with this project. Thank you.
Thanks. Push it. Happens all the time.
Wireless.
Don't.
That's okay. Run out of hands. Good evening. My name is Todd Wright. My office is at 5801 Christie Avenue in Emeryville, and I am assisting Pete's in this conversion of their roasting facility into offices. And I first want to thank the staff. We've worked with them over the last several months to work through this application, to resolve issues that came up and address them. And I believe that we are in agreement with them on the conditions of approval. So we will accept those conditions. We can discuss some access. We have concerns about the pedestrian and how it exactly works out. Perhaps we'll just work the details out with the staff as it unfolds. It's a very unusual mid-block crossing, and we want to make sure that it's safe and that it can work for the community. Also, we are, I think, really proud that the Park Avenue, this picture before you will change. Well, as I drove into Pete's this afternoon, the no parking signs were in. And is it not coming up?
It's not coming up on our computers, our screens.
We're not getting it on our screens.
It's
So we need to turn around and look at it.
Are they all on input one?
It's not coming on this screen, but it's up on the big one.
I don't know why it's.
Okay, well, we can just turn around and look up.
So much for having all the technology working right all the time. This is the front of Pete's right now, and it's a nice frontage. It'll look even nicer as the Park Avenue planned improvements are put in place. Currently, Pete's, as you can see, oh, now I can use this, right here, and what they would like to do is take and consolidate the offices. As Pete's has expanded, they've had to lease other space elsewhere. They started out with 12,000 feet at 1,400, and over time have wound up in a series of buildings. With this application here, with the roasting moving to Alameda, we can potentially put 40,000 square feet of office in this building. To help define a little bit more about the parking and the layout, and I apologize to Diana because I don't even think she's seen this one. We were working on it this afternoon. This is the 16-foot pedestrian area right down here. Colors are not showing up really well on this screen. But what it would be is the back here. We would configure parking. This is the outside that you can see when you go by. This would be inside the existing building, parking in here. Access into it would be through our shed. We have bicycle parking, trash and recycling here. If this needed to go to 20 feet or 16, we can accommodate either one. And then we'll build the pedestrian cut-through right at the very back of the property. We would propose keeping the existing fencing along there. The 16 feet would essentially provide for a pedestrian walkway, some landscape on both sides, and a couple of lights, pedestrian lights, probably a 12 or 15 foot height, whichever height is appropriate. And I think that's how it would lay through. We have a combination of some tandem parking here, but for the most part, it's just all standard size parking.
Is your suggestion to have fencing on the south side of that pedestrian easement between the pedestrian easement and the parking lot, or?
Well, it would be our preference to actually close this and lock it and secure it at night, only because I'm not sure about the safety questions along here, but we've not had time to go through that with staff yet, so I'm not sure quite what the right solution is. This would be if it were fenced along this line right here, you'd wind up with a 16-foot wide fenced on both sides. I'm not sure what the right answer is there. But I think we could work that detail out with staff and however we needed to.
So your proposal is to keep fencing on both
On the
Holden
end.
and Horton and
Right,
have your
and we would
garage
lock it
gated,
at
or the
night.
parking lot gated,
Yeah.
which is the existing condition.
Yes. On this is a shot down Holden. Boy, if we had the lights out, we'd get a little bit more color to it. But this existing sidewalk here, which is approximately 6 feet, would be removed, and a new sidewalk 12 feet in width we would put in place. As you look down Holden right here, you're looking down the street. Horton. I'm sorry, there's too many H's here.
This is confusing.
Yeah. And we would be installing street trees 25 feet on center, consistent with the Park Avenue plan. To address one of the questions that we are anticipating, in earlier discussions, there was question about having a Pete's retail store in this location. And while we have a Pete's at the public market, we are awaiting a time when this particular area has enough people in it that will really support a retail operation. Further, we believe that it would likely be at a different location. The existing floor of the building is right here at this elevation. This is a corner of Park and Horton, and it's about 5 feet above the sidewalk. So the logistics of trying to get up to that are not really feasible. And there are other locations in this area that we believe would be appropriate for a Pete's when the demographics get there. With that, I think I'll turn it over to Robert McGillis of Bant Associates, our architect, to discuss some of the exterior issues.
Okay, thank you, Todd. Robert McGillis with Philip Banda's office here in Emeryville. And just want to thank the staff for working with us to come up with a solution we think you'll be happy with. The goal of the project team was really to have minimal impact to this existing facility. Most of the work is as we absorb the existing roasting facility inside and convert those to offices. And this view here is the main entrance. One of the challenges is to provide a new accessible entry, and we're going to be doing that internally, so there'll be no impact along the exterior facade here, and no changes proposed to the windows along the side, with the exception down on Horton, where we'll be this existing black glazing will be removed and replaced with a new window assembly. Other way?
It doesn't want to work here. Whoops, it did work. Oh, I'm sorry. Whoops, whoops, whoops. Go in. Hang on.
Oh, you got all the sneak previews.
Yeah, we got it. It was working. So, there you go.
This is the existing elevation along Holden, showing that was some of your questions about the parking along that street there. This shows the existing roasting facility with I believe those are curtains on the windows there, and goes all the way back to the right there, this area over here, where the loading dock area is. This area over here is where the existing offices are, and you can see some of the newer windows that were replaced via earlier project there. So our goal is in this area here, there'll be new offices, and the challenge is to find a replacement for those windows that will allow for an energy efficient solution, provide for the comfort for the employees that will be occupying that space. And these existing factory sash windows with small steel and the many panes did not allow for the thermal break and some of the environmental issues we wanted to respond to. So you'll see if this works. There we go. That's what we're proposing to do, is remove and replace with this new configuration of windows using a new thermally efficient window system. And you can see back here, it's hard to see, but that glazing back there, we're proposing to not have glass in the mullions. Now this configuration, we've gone back and forth whether or not to leave the existing multi-paned assembly or remove and replace with a similar layout shown here and just take the glazing out. So again, you'll see, other than the glazing itself, you won't see much impact to the exterior of the building. And I'm here for questions as well.
Any questions?
You're leaving those large roll-up doors in there, even though there's...
That's the current plan, just the doors here are down 24 hours a day is my understanding, so.
We'll seal them up.
Can you speak into the microphone, please?
Sorry.
I mean, the facade, I think, would look nicer if you just ran the windows the whole distance, but that would be substantial cost. Or
It would. I mean, it can be done both ways. We happen to be proposing it this way. I can argue both sides of that, but if we, in keeping with it, we were just going for the minimal impact approach.
But the awning's on your property anyway. The overhang of the awning is on
That
your
is
property?
on the property.
Right.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Could you go back to the plan showing the
Parking?
walkway, the parking lot, the back of the building?
Sure. Okay. As we said, this is the existing edge of the building. This is a loading dock area. That's why there's no parking up there. It's about 3 feet above the parking area here. This is a metal shed part. Grade starts out at street and rises about 3 feet up to here to get to the same elevation as the floor of the building itself.
You have a question?
Are you proposing any kind of improvements to that loading dock area? Any kind of use space for the employees where they could come out and sit in the sun in break time? Or?
Well, this whole area here is accessible, will be accessible out here during break time, and it's covered. So it has an awning that extends over the loading dock area. I haven't showed how this could be, where we would set the openings. We just hadn't worked out that detail.
Is that it for your question?
Well, yeah.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Art.
I want to explore this parking. If I understand it correctly, you have met the parking requirements with the parking inside the building and the yard. Is that right?
That is correct.
So the parking on Horton Street is public parking, will be public parking.
The parking on
Horton.
Actually,
Holden.
the
I've
the
titled
labels
it
on
wrong.
that
Yeah.
plan are reversed.
Right.
Horton should be
Excuse me.
Holden, and Holden should be
Horton
Horton.
is where you're widening the sidewalks and you're planting the trees, isn't that right?
That is
Yes.
on Horton.
Correct.
That is correct.
On
And
Horton.
the parking that is not to be removed is on Holden Street.
I know, but
Yeah.
but that will be public parking on Holden, on
No, it's
Horton.
it's private.
That is correct.
I thought it was to be private still.
No, that's Holden.
Holden.
Horton Street
Horton.
will be public.
So my question is, if you have adequate parking within your building, why not, by the way, I like your design and I like the windows and I think you've done a great job, but why not share the parking on Holden Street with the public? Why do you want to keep that if you already have enough parking?
The primary concern we have is the legal and insurance issues. If we call for that as a public parking space, then we have certain concerns about legal issues and ramifications of officially.
Can't you put up a sign, park at your own risk, or something like that?
Any good attorney will tell you how they can get around that one. But that is the primary concern for us is addressing the legal and liability issues.
But you have agreed that if the city puts in the sidewalk, then you'd abandon the parking.
That is correct. There is no choice there.
So that would take care of it.
Is there a timeline for the Holden Street improvements, Charlie?
Not for Holden Street.
No, not Holden.
I don't.
What's the use across the street on Holden?
There's PG&E to the north, and then there's a Roger Bash building with Dupuy in it, and a couple of small brick warehouses, and a parking lot,
It's
and
not
the
the co-op.
Victorian.
No.
The co-op isn't there.
The co-op is to the north.
No, okay.
Yeah. The Artist Co-op is right on the other side of this path.
Any other questions of the applicant before we open the public hearing? Thank you. So with that, we'll open the public hearing. If you line up, we'll give you, introduce yourself. We'll give you 3 minutes to address the commission. Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Sharon Wilshire, 1420 45th Street, and I'm the community liaison for the Emeryville Artist Co-op. And first of all, just like everyone before me this evening, I wanted to thank Diana, who's been very responsive and providing me with a lot of information and a lot of email dialogue with questions that were coming from my community. And I think that once we realized that the footprint of the building wasn't going to change and that there weren't going to be any height changes. Those initially were concerns, but not an issue. Most of what I've heard has to do with that pedestrian mid-block throughway, both in terms of landscaping issues, privacy, security. This was new tonight to find out the thought that it would be left open 24 hours a day instead of being open the same hours as Emeryville Parks, which I think was what was originally proposed or what I had first understood. I don't have a digital camera, so I had a Polaroid.
You can put that on
You
the
can put it
overhead,
on
and then
the-
we can actually see it. And there's a zoom on there too, down to the right, I think, so you can enlarge it if you want to. Just put it right on there. There you go. You should be able to pull back or go forward. There's a button down there with a little arrow. That's a focus.
That would be good.
Basically, well,
Yeah.
okay.
Is that the only one?
No, it's fine. That's fine.
So it's not focused.
Except it's not focused.
There.
Okay. Anyway, I took a couple of shots down our driveway just to show you what's on our side. We have a lot of vines that are on the fence.
So that's the north side of the property line there?
That's actually that's the north side of Pete's property.
Right.
Okay. So I guess we were, hoping to get more information about what was planned, and some more has been presented this evening. Actually, right now, all of these vines spill over onto the other side of the fence, so that's what Pete's is looking at.
This shot is up on Horton Street?
No. This is we have a driveway. We actually have, let's see, Horton Street is back here. In fact, I can show you, let's see, here's a shot that shows you the co-op is to the north, Pete's is to the south. So this is the fence here. This is the driveway that we have. It's secured with a security gate on this end that we have a entrance clicker.
So that gate's closed most of the time?
Oh, it's closed off. It's closed unless someone has the
Gate open.
Gate opener, right. So this is what's on our side. And actually, it's a very narrow driveway. People just usually park, parallel park there, and then our building is actually, is starting just about over here.
Right.
The backside of
Sharon, you need to speak into the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's the backside. It's a very narrow drive. That's my 3 minutes. One of the things that
We'll give you 30 seconds to wrap up.
One of the things that I think would perhaps be something that my community would respond to is that the co-op has been at this site for 34 years, and we would, I think, appreciate being a part of the dialogue, not just staff and Pete's, but in terms of this mid-block crossing and what's going to be happening there. And I know that there are some other members of my community here who may want to speak this evening.
I have one question. Generally, does the co-op community feel that access across the mid-block is a positive thing?
I think this is
desirable?
I think this is is this the first that we're doing? Right. So I think security has been the biggest thing that I've been, people are concerned about that, concerned about the general public having access to our property line in a new way. Because, just because of we've had, Pete's has been right, has been developed right up to the line too. So, that's been most of what I've heard from the community, is just wondering how this is going to work, and it's a long passage. That's what I've been hearing from, not just from my members who live in Horton Holden, but in the 45th Street building as well.
That walkway abuts your property? Is that
Yes,
it would.
We're right on it'd be right on the other side of that fence.
Thanks, Sharon.
Okay.
Chair Martin?
Yes.
Just to clarify.
And can we have you sign in there, Sharon, off to the right?
I believe Diana said this in her staff presentation, but the Park Avenue District Plan, as approved by the Commission and City Council, does call for breaking up the large blocks between Park Avenue and 45th Street. And that's basically this block and the block immediately to the east between Holden and Hollis. So in the future, if the PG&E property that's south of 45th Street were to redevelop, there could be another mid-block crossing of that block, which would get you over to Hollis Street. And then later when the Sherwin-Williams property develops and develops the greenway down at that end of town, you could have a connection between Hollis Street and the greenway via
Through
these
Sherwin.
mid-block crossings
Along Sherwin.
and Sherwin Avenue.
Right. Thanks, Charlie.
I'm Scott Donahue. I live at the Artist Co-op as well. I'm concerned about on-street parking on Holden Street, where currently we don't have that much. And Pete's controls the access to a lot of the potential on-street parking that we used to have when the Lowen Company owned it. They let all of us and anyone park from the public on where Pete's parks now. And when we divided our parcels at 4250 Horton and 4333 Holden, we took a parcel off and we sold it. We couldn't keep it, and the city exacted for us dividing into two parcels a toll on us, and the toll was to take a lot of our property on Holden Street and make a sidewalk and public parking. And it just seems like this is the time for you to ensure that we get additional on-street parking for this neighborhood. And also, hopefully, a sidewalk in the future, because as it is right now, there is no continuous sidewalk on Holden Street that goes between 45th and Park. And we're supposed to be a pedestrian-oriented neighborhood, and you cannot walk continuously on a sidewalk because the sidewalk is discontinuous on the east side of the street. When it hits PG&E, it becomes less than 2 feet wide. And on the Pete's side, there is no sidewalk. And as it is now, Pete's parking there, the cars actually go into the public right-of-way. And I think that if, at minimum, the city very inexpensively could stripe parallel parking. Stripe a sidewalk would cost you next to nothing as an alternate if the city didn't want to do it, or at least establish that the city will have the right to make a sidewalk in the future and the right to have public parking at minimum. Also, I want to point out that I don't think co-op members inherently had trouble with Pete's manufacturing. What we had trouble with was when they would come in after hours, when they were not allowed to, with their trucks and unload and load, and it was very loud, and it would keep our members awake at night. And we had an enforcement issue, and finally, after years of problems, Pete's stopped doing that at night. We would like to make sure that in the future that Pete's has their deliveries limited to the current hours that they can currently deliver to, which limits late night deliveries. Even though it's going to be an office, we don't want to give them the right to have big truck deliveries in the middle of the night. And I think that's important for our co-op members because we're residents right on this facility. So that was the main problem. It wasn't the manufacturing per se. Also, Pete's originally offered to put retail on the street when they came in 1996. And for some reason, it never made it in the final documents, even though it was a part of public record for the spoken offer to have retail. I'll finish this up. And just there's a retail opportunity at Pete's current site on the Holden and Park Street corner, where the elevation gain is not 5 feet or 4 feet at Horton Street, but it's a little less than 2 feet. It would be much more accessible right there at that corner. So Pete's could have an easier time putting retail in their current facility. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Scott. Can you sign in off to the right there?
My name is James Morris, and I've been with the Emeryville Artists Cooperative for 17 years. And I'm the one that planted those vines that are along the fence. I'm very much interested in seeing the greening of Emeryville, making it more friendly to people. I was also one of the founders of the Emeryville Community Organic Garden. So I applaud the effort of making things pedestrian friendly and planting, but this is the first time I've seen this pedestrian walkway, and I have some real concerns. It seems to me like not only from the standpoint that as a resident, and my studio happens to be right facing Pete's and the driveway. Even with our fencing, with our gates, we have people who hop over and attempt to break into the studios and sometimes successfully, and cars. So that is one concern, but also for someone who's walking that walkway, I don't think I'd want to walk after dark in a long corridor like that. All it would take is some people on one end to follow behind you and other people waiting on the other end, and you're stuck in the middle. So I just think that the thing needs to be really thought out well before it's implemented. But again, I'd like to state that I do support the idea of a more pedestrian, bicycle-friendly Emeryville, and I guess that's all I have to say right now.
Thanks, James. Can you sign in?
Hi, my name's Mary Andrews, and I'm with the Emeryville Artists Co-op, and I live in the Horton Street building. And my first thoughts when I heard about this walkway is that it's a great idea. But tonight, I came to see the plan, and I am very much opposed to it being open 24 hours a day. Not only is that area a driveway that Sharon pictured, it's also our back patios. We have 2 patios that we sometimes dine at. We make artwork out there that can't be done inside because of fumes. So it has other activity besides simply a place to park our cars. James has a large garden out there, and it's a nice place to sit in the evening when it's hot inside. But we have had bicycles stolen from our patio. We've had break-ins, the car break-ins on the street have been on the rise, and I feel that it's a bad idea. I think it's an attractive nuisance to have that open 24 hours. I'd like to see it closed at dark, or I guess the previous suggestion was 9 p.m. at the latest. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have a question to the commenter, Art?
How tall is the fence along your property line?
It's about 6 feet.
Yeah, there's vines that grow higher than the structure.
It's a 6-foot fence now between you and Pete's?
It's a 6-foot cyclone fence. Actually, they doubled it up, what they did when Pete's moved in.
James, can you come up to the microphone so everybody can hear you at home?
All right, I'm very familiar with it. What happened when Pete's moved in and after the chrome plating business moved out, they actually built a second cyclone fence, or they put more fencing up with slats for some privacy, which wasn't really quite enough, so that's why, and plus it was very ugly, so that's why the vines there. Now the vines bring it up a little higher, and then there's actually bamboo at the one end, so.
If they were required to put up a higher fence, would that make you feel more comfortable?
Well, I don't know. I mean, because I've seen, in an effort to try and be secure at the Horton end, we even have those barbed, I forget what it's called, but it's a barrier ostensibly to anyone coming over. Even with that, people have hopped over the fence to try and, grab whatever they could. So.
Anyone else?
Patricia Jeffrey, 1500 Park Avenue. One thing that the commission might want to consider as a compromise for the pedestrian way is, as Charlie had indicated, that ultimately the goal is to have another pathway extend through the next block over and then over into Sherwin-Williams. Perhaps the commission could consider at this point in time having it be maintained during typical park hours, and at that time where there's an extension of that walkway where there would be more activity, then consider opening it up for 24 hours a day. I think that could possibly be a compromise that perhaps the residents of the Artists Co-op might consider. I had a couple questions and points that I wanted to bring up. One is a quick question on the pro forma fee calculation, Charlie. And under the fees to be paid at permit issuance, there's a school fees, and I don't see any dollar amount in there, and we're looking at a little over 31,000 square feet of additional office space, and there is a fee that is assessed for office space as well as residential space. So I'd like to make sure that that fee is calculated and that the school district does receive that money.
Okay. these fees are calculated by our building division. I'm not sure exactly what the basis for them is, but I will
Okay,
check on
just
that.
a note, and if the city is deciding that there isn't a fee, I would like to know why that's the case, since it's very typical for commercial office to be paying the fee as well as residential and industrial. And then another question that I had was regarding the undergrounding of the utility lines. In the staff report, it references that Pete's was willing to write a check there, and it's understandable that at this point in time, since there's not going, we don't want to hold up the undergrounding along Park Avenue, but at some point in the future, when Sherwin-Williams develops, that area presumably would all be undergrounded. And is the city, will they be requesting of Pete's that they can write a check now and it goes into some sort of a fund for undergrounding? There doesn't seem to be anything in there in terms of a condition to link that with the ultimate paying for that undergrounding.
At first, we had negotiated that Pete's would write a check for the undergrounding and that Public Works would hold it until the time when that would happen. And then when the city attorney reviewed my staff report, he said, well, why have them do that when we might get that as part of development that happens in the area later? And this walkway you've put into the future, you should have the walkway happen now and they build the walkway. So we offered to trade. We
Okay.
said, why don't you do the walkway and then instead of the undergrounding, and maybe we might be able to get somebody else to
We
do the
will
undergrounding
require
later.
Sherwin-Williams to do the undergrounding all the way
On
to
that
Park
portion.
Avenue in the future.
Okay, that's fine, as long as it gets taken care of. I don't have a problem who pays for it.
It's pretty ugly.
Thanks, those are my comments.
Thanks, Patty. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. More questions from commissioners before we go into comments? I actually had a question about landscaping in parking lots. Is there a provision in the zoning code that requires a minimum landscape provision within a parking lot, and would it apply to this application, seeing that they're restriping? I believe there's provision in the zoning code around landscaping in parking lots.
There is a provision in the zoning code, and I was thinking they weren't changing the parking lot, so it didn't apply. But if they're restriping, does that bring it in?
It's just, it's not a huge parking lot, but it is a parking lot. I don't know whether their intention is to eventually do something more with the property. I'm just wondering why that wasn't addressed. I
Because
didn't
it's
see
not
it.
a new parking lot. That was my thought.
Okay.
Um,
You're checking the zoning code, Charlie, to make sure that we're complying with the zoning code there?
Yes. And actually, well, I'd have to look at it more closely. Oh, right. The way the code is structured, the landscaping requirements for parking lots are by zone, by district. And it gives you one set of requirements for residential districts, one set of requirements for commercial districts, one set of requirements for industrial districts. And in,
This is an industrial district.
oh,
Like,
yes, actually it does. Trees equal in number to one per 7.5 parking stalls, either grouped or clustered, shall be installed in all parking areas containing 35 or more spaces. Said trees shall be placed on the lot so as not to interfere with interior industrial parking lot circulation. Trees shall be placed so as to give relief to the monotony of rows of parked vehicles. So, if we were to interpret this as a new parking lot or change to the parking lot, which I guess it is, they should have one tree for every 7.5 parking spaces.
Does staff have written language for the revisions that the applicant has requested? I didn't see that on the dais. Diana, you went over some comments or suggested revisions?
I do have it written down. The city shall maintain the public walkway from Holden to Horton Street across the north end of the site. And the owners of this property shall not be required to pay for placing utility wires underground on Horton Street unless such payment is required in connection with future Pete's improvements.
And where were you suggesting those be incorporated into conditions of approval?
Well, good question. Wherever we have the walkway in there. Excuse me?
14.
Page 14. Thank you. The bottom of that page.
Oh, that's the general stuff. Oh, design conditions and site standards, yeah. Wait, where's the walkway?
Oh, the walkway's under landscaping plans. So it's A2. So we could just add it to A2.
On page 12?
On 13? Is it on page 12 or page 13?
Page 13, 14,
Under design conditions and site standards?
down here.
There have been a couple times in the past where when we didn't capture the language and have the commission actually look at it, there's been some question after the fact about the interpretation. So I just want to make sure that we are very clear about where any changes are going in terms of specific conditions and what that language is.
Well, actually, there's conditions about the walkway in the parking and transportation section also, on page 12 and 13, both under prior to building permit, prior to certificate of occupancy, and ongoing.
Okay, well, maybe while staff
If
works
it's-
on that,
If it's about maintenance, it goes in ongoing, page 13, C2. And the other one is not really about the walkway exactly. So that might be in the first section.
The utility
The
plan?
general, maybe that goes in the general section at the beginning.
okay, Diana, I'm going to let you figure out where that's going to go until you're satisfied with the language. I'm going to ask Charlie about to summarize the financial issues again, not just the undergrounding that was raised, but also the sidewalk improvements and the city's decision to push for this pedestrian easement as a trade-off in terms of cost. Can you summarize all of the
Well, I
financial
can summarize what
projections
our negotiations with Pete's were, if that's what you'd like to hear.
and how that relates to what we're seeing as
Sure.
the project approval and conditions?
When we first sat down with Pete's, of course, staff came to the table with our laundry list, as they can confirm. We basically asked for everything we could possibly think of that would benefit the city and the public. That included curb gutter sidewalk on both the Holden and Horton Street sides, not Park Avenue, because the city is doing that separately. We asked for the pedestrian walkway, and we asked for undergrounding of utilities, and we suggested that they replace the windows with ones that look just like the existing windows. I think that was it. Was there anything else on our list? That was enough, right? And so we talked about it. And I'll tell you, they didn't mention this, but I'll tell you quite frankly, they have a 2-year safety valve, shall we say, on their lease, which allows them to leave Emeryville if they find that things here aren't working out for them. Otherwise, they have a long-term lease that they can renew. And it's quite possible that if things didn't pencil for them, that they could just decide to relocate to some other place. So they made that quite clear. And we went back and forth, and finally, and of course also a major concern both to them and to us is that whatever exactions or improvements Pete's is required to make needs to be proportional to the magnitude of the project. We can't ask them to repave every street in Emeryville, for example. We have to require things that are, reasonable and proportional to what they're proposing to do. If they were proposing to tear down this building and build a whole new major building project, we would be asking for a lot more. But in light of the size and scale of the project and what they felt comfortable, being willing to do, both the Public Works Director and myself agreed that Horton Street was the highest priority. And so we settled on that they would do the curb gutter sidewalk on Horton Street in accordance with the Park Avenue plan and the street trees, and that they would pay us a flat sum for undergrounding of the utilities, and that they would also give us an irrevocable offer to dedicate an easement for the path in the future. And that's the deal we struck with them. And what we took off the table was the improvements on the Holden Street side, although we did make it clear that the parking that's on the Holden Street side would not count towards their parking requirement, because they wouldn't be able to use that parking in the future when the city ever builds a sidewalk along there. And we also said that it was okay with us, as Diana explained, for them to use the new windows that they wanted to put in. That's a big ticket item for them. So that was what we had. And then, as Diana mentioned, when the city attorney reviewed it, property acquisition and improvement is a very complex, time-consuming, expensive undertaking for the city and the city attorney's office. And his position was it would be a lot easier and beneficial to the city if we could have them give us that pathway right now and improve it and build it all and be done with it. And then we can deal with the undergrounding later in conjunction with other future projects. So after the city attorney reviewed it, we talked to Pete's, and they agreed that we would trade the path for the check for the undergrounding. So that's where we ended up with where we are today.
And the net cost to the applicant of your comparison of the original list you had to what they are now looking at?
I don't think we've actually discussed that with them. I think the value of this land, if you go with the value of land in Emeryville, is probably a lot more than how much they were going to give us for the undergrounding.
Or the other improvements?
Well, that's the only thing. They're still doing the curb gutter sidewalk on Horton Street and the street trees.
Right.
So the only thing that is not
off the table is
off the
Holden.
table is that check for the undergrounding.
Okay.
And Holden Street.
And the Holden frontage.
Well, no, we took that off the table originally. I'm just saying from what we were going to bring to the commission, and what is different from what we were going to bring to the commission is that we're not asking for a check for the undergrounding now, but we are asking them to both dedicate and improve the walkway.
Okay. I guess there have been concerns expressed about that easement and how functional and useful it's going to be. And I actually have those concerns as well. I think it's great to have those connections, and I support improving connectivity. I almost feel like it's appropriate for this connection to go through if that parking lot ever gets redeveloped with another use on top of it as part of some future reuse. I haven't seen enough in what was presented tonight by the applicant and to convince me that it makes sense, especially as a 24-hour pathway, given the concerns, the reasonable concerns that have been expressed, and not only of the adjacent property owners, but of the applicant as well. It's almost like a little gauntlet there. And I think right now there's a condition, or you're suggesting a condition that it be open 24 hours a day?
That's what Public Works and other staff people decided they would rather see.
And is that in writing in one of the conditions right now, or is that another change that we physically haven't?
That would be a change to that condition.
Okay.
I'm a little confused as to the status of this path. The leaseholder is going to build the improvement and turn it over to the city for maintenance and operation? Is that correct?
Yes, that's what's
Well,
proposed.
the property owner is involved in this too, obviously. And it'd be
Right.
the property owner who would have to turn it over to the city.
Ms. Pete's is a tenant.
But the operation of this path will not, and maintenance will not be the responsibility of the property owner.
Right.
It will be his land, but the operation and maintenance of it will be the city's responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the issue we had with closing it at night is just a practical matter. Who's going to do it? Who's going to go down there and close it every night? It could be.
We have a volunteer.
Did actually.
There's a volunteer.
Both in our current operation and our planned future operation, we do not have security as part of that. by keeping the parking lot area fenced and gated the way we do, that provides us enough security.
Is the gates into your existing parking lot, are those by key, or are those just in the morning you open them up and in the evening you close them?
We opened them for an hour. We did until 4 weeks ago because we were having a similar problem with people coming onto our property uninvited. So now it's key fob only.
No.
Access.
You know, it just occurred to me, we have a mid-block pathway right behind this building that's got a gate that can be locked at both ends. Comes off Hollis Street, goes through here
Into
to
the
the
parking
parking
lot.
lot and over to Haven Street.
Yeah.
And that's open 24/7. And I'm not aware that we've ever had any big problems back there. We could lock it if we needed to, but we never have.
But it's not adjacent to any residential use
That's true.
either. And
That's true.
I think that's,
I mean, one of the options would be to have a gate, and if there's a problem, you know, then it's something that the city would provide attention to. But by locking it at night or dusk or when parks close, I just want to make sure that we're clear in this public access easement condition on page 12 exactly what we're getting, because it's other than 16 feet wide, and go work out the details with staff. You know, we don't have much to look at in terms of lighting or the landscaping or whether it's going to be gated or not. I think it's a good suggestion that the neighboring residents be brought into that discussion with staff and the applicant in deciding what goes on there. I think they should have an input into the landscaping and the decisions around the gating and other details of that path, including the lighting. And I'm wondering if that condition can be revised to provide an opportunity for them to participate in that decision.
well, would it be possible to grant the easement and perhaps have a fee for the improvement and then do it at some point in the future when it can tie in with something else? I mean, it seems to me the beneficiaries of this path are going to be the residential people, the people who live in the neighborhood, not the people who work in the neighborhood. And if the people who live in the neighborhood and live adjacent to it right now really don't want it, maybe it shouldn't go in at this time.
Yeah, that was one of the options I was thinking of as well.
So that's there, it's dedicated.
We're having discussions here. We're talking about an option of not requiring improvement for the easement right now, but having a revised condition that calls for some point in the future having the easement enacted with improvements when
Well,
the area gets developed.
Yeah, if the
How would that work?
part of the problem with the condition that we were originally suggesting was that they would have given us an irrevocable offer to dedicate an easement, but they wouldn't have had to do it now. They would have done it at some point in the future when we said it was necessary, but at that point in time, they would have had to redesign their parking lot to get it out of that 16-foot strip.
In the future, yeah.
In the future, what we could do is have them dedicate it now so that the city has that 16-foot easement. They've redesigned the parking so it doesn't have to ever be moved in the future. It doesn't cover that area. And we could just fence the whole area off and have it not be accessible to anybody until some future date when the city decides it needs to be improved. I guess part of the question, though, would be at that point in time, whenever that may be, who's going to improve it?
Right.
I'm not sure Pete's wants to be on the hook to improve a path in 20 years or 15,
5 years.
5 years or whatever, when we decide that we want it.
Yeah, and then there's a parking reconfiguration issue as well.
Well, they wouldn't have to reconfigure because it would be designed.
Oh, you're saying design around just a blank 16-foot strip?
Yeah, just have a 16-foot strip that's fenced off and not accessible.
The applicant wishes to say something here.
If allowed to by the chairman, I would recommend one approach, and again, I'd be subject to how the city attorney would like to pursue it. One option could be to grant the easement now so that the right to cross land is secured. We can write a check for the amount of the improvements, provide that to the city, and at the point in time when the development in the area has occurred to a point where the installation of the pedestrian walkway makes sense, that the city can undertake it. The funds have already been deposited. And in the meantime, I would recommend that we don't fence it off, because then it just becomes, it has its own set of issues. My recommendation, which may be different than the planning director, is simply that we leave it open. We have the offer. They can, we can essentially, the city can come in at any time to build those improvements.
And you would use it for tandem parking or something
Yeah,
else?
I mean, as a practical matter, we'd probably wind up with a tandem or some parking configuration. We're not proposing to reshape this parking lot, except over right directly adjacent to the building. So if you've seen the parking area, it's at most a question of some striping.
I actually would rather see if there is going to be an easement, I'd rather see it improved now and kept open to the parking lot rather than having fences down both sides, because that sounds atrocious to have a long, narrow, bare spot. If it were improved and landscaped now and functionally a part of the parking lot, then you would at least have some further landscaping along the north side of the parking lot, which has no trees in it at all now. So it would give...
Well, so you're suggesting that it be built but only have a fence on the
north side.
Artist Co-op side?
Right, that the co-op fence with the vines on it remain untouched, and that...
No gates or anything, just...
Well, the park, depending on whether it was used now or not.
Well, if it's going to be used now, then there'd have to be a fence put on both sides, so...
What does it? Doesn't have to have a fence on
And you hadn't decided yet whether you were even suggesting a fence on the south side of the easement.
Right, that would be something to work out. I guess one of the other options that you could consider in following up on Commissioner Donaldson's approach would be, we would dedicate the easement, we'd put in the improvements, but we'd keep it essentially, we wouldn't make it accessible to pedestrians until some point down the road. We'd essentially be fencing it off along Holden and Horton Street. That would be another option. And we'd have to maintain this landscape area until such time as the city wanted to call for...
In that point, you would then put in gates at either end of the path and put a fence on your side of it.
Well, I think we'd have to work out that detail. I haven't figured out exactly, the mechanism. I'm sort of winging it a little bit here. And
I don't know, I think this is sort of a significant enough issue that I would like to see it come back again, actually. The public access pedestrian path, whether it's landscaped now or later, whether the co-op feels comfortable with the results of the...
Oh, after having had a chance to work that out with staff and the applicant, so that information on lighting and gating and fencing is all resolved.
Is there any way that Pete's would volunteer to secure the pathway after dark?
That becomes an enforcement problem.
yeah, I think no.
It's a public facility, so we'd be taking on a liability on their part, I would think.
But if the pathway was put in and you didn't have a fence on the south side, you'd have no security in your parking lot.
That would be an issue that we would have to assess if we felt that.
But if you had a gate there, then you would have security.
At least at night, if the gate's locked.
I mean, it seems to me you yourself have said that have a 16-foot pathway with fences on both sides is like a tunnel. That's not very attractive, and I think the most attractive pathway is to have a fence on one side and not on the other, and now you have the problem of security, and I thought the only way to solve that is to have a gate at each of the ends so you could have a secure parking lot. It helps us and it helps you.
Right. And then the question is securing that gate at night.
Well, it could only be secured then during non-working hours, and that would mean it would not be open on weekends either.
Maybe initially the compromise is to have it, I agree we should have the pathway immediately, not fence on the south side, and maybe the halfway measure is to have it open only during your business hours. At least we'll have that, rather than nothing. And that shouldn't be a problem for you.
Well, they have a
And then in the
secure
future-
parking lot now, and he has stated that they plan to have it controlled at all times.
Not with a
Therefore,
pathway.
they're going to have to have a fence along that public
And
path on the
I'm-
south side.
And I'm against that.
Well, then that kills the whole deal.
No, it doesn't.
Maurice,
Not
did you?
necessarily.
Maurice, I saw you edging to say something earlier. Did you want to address this issue and give us clarification so we have a great solution?
All I was telling to Charlie was that it makes sense to take the easement now, and if we're going to take the improvements later, we could the city could build the improvements at a later date when the PG&E site or whatever happens across the way on Holden Street further develops. Whether or not we have a fence on both sides, I mean, that's something that's really an operational issue, and it's very difficult to decide. I understand both sides of the decision. And in any event, the city council is going to have to accept this easement and accept any of the responsibility of how it wants to operate the maintenance and everything related to this easement. So we need to think through what it's going to cost if the city has to go in there, maintain it, operate it, close the gates at night. So that needs to be thought through.
Okay.
Seems like there's a lot of open questions
Yes.
about this.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we move forward with the proposal to either try to define this and come back to another meeting, or to accept the easement but not make the improvements until some later date, given that
I think
there is a reduction in the cost to the applicant, whether it's inappropriate to look at putting in sidewalk improvements along Holden as a trade-off and finishing the Holden frontage. There were concerns expressed tonight about either allowing the public to park in that perpendicular parking or make the Holden Street sidewalk improvements and return the on-street parking to the public. So I'm just wondering about the cost weight to the applicant and how that might factor into a decision.
Well, I think the applicant will have to respond to that. I see Jim shaking his head. I was going to suggest that we accept the easement now and have Pete's just, landscape it or something. I mean, just make it be adjacent part of their parking lot. Leave it where it is now. Don't put any cars in it, because if you put parking in it, it's going to be hard to get the parking out of it in the future, because people are going to get used to parking there. So have them dedicate the 16-foot easement, but the city wouldn't take it right now.
And would you have them improve it?
No.
Landscape.
No.
Just dedicate it.
We'd accept it. We'd accept the easement, but they wouldn't improve it right now. They could just put some grass on it or something and give us a check for, say, $100,000 for future improvements.
And what is the date certain for those improvements, and how do we capture resident input into the design of that easement in terms of lighting and security?
I would imagine
and gating?
we'd probably go through a process similar to what we've done for the Doyle Hollis Park.
Do we need to capture that in condition language here so that it's clear? I think some reference should be made to the process.
Well, I'm not sure that's really a condition on Pete's. That's something that the city would be responsible
Well,
for
there's
in the
issues of
future.
fencing, whether there's going to be a fence on the south side of the easement, whether it's going to be gated, whether the gate is going to be locked. I think those are issues that Pete's will have some input into.
Well, it's going to be a non-starter if there's not a fence on the south side. Otherwise, Pete's has no security at all.
Unless they're willing to take care of the gates.
It's not their property. It's the city's property. once
Well,
the
I
easement
think
is granted.
I think I agree with Commissioner Cardoza. Even during the daytime hours, Pete's is planning, I believe, to have their parking lot gated and locked. And so this would be basically allowing the public access to their parking lot during working hours when they would prefer their parking lot to be secured. So I don't see how you can do it without a fence on the south side.
Okay, well, back to my point about...
Then I vote to use the money for Holden Street.
Back to my point about accepting the grant easement, accepting a check, and having somewhere in the condition language that addresses implementation of the easement and participation of the adjacent residents and Pete's in the discussion about lighting and security and design. I think we need to acknowledge that in this.
Well, I agree that needs to be
application.
something we need to memorialize somehow, but the conditions of approval on this conditional use permit are requirements on Pete's that will run with the land in perpetuity. And I don't really think the procedure the city is going to follow in the future for designing and building and operating this easement area is really a requirement on Pete's that belongs on their conditional use permit. So
Okay.
I'm not sure how we capture that.
On page
Maybe
12,
not
under
ideas.
condition Roman numeral 6A2 is the public easement condition. And right now,
Right.
there's a direction to prepare a plan, have it reviewed and approved by the planning director and public works. And it seems like that's the appropriate place to capture language about that and include public participation from adjacent residents
Well,
in that
that's
process.
assuming that Pete's is going to design and build this easement.
Well,
Well-
I'm saying that in a revised condition similar to this, that captures the granting of the easement now, the payment of the fee, and a future improvement to that easement.
But it's going to be done by the city, not by Pete's. So
It's
you're
a process.
putting into a Pete's condition something that the city has to do. Is that what you're asking
I
for?
understand that. I want, as part of this process, an acknowledgement that this will happen at some point in the future, that there's going to be improvement to this easement. So we have a language about granting the easement, we have language about payment of fee, but I'd also like there to be an acknowledgement that that easement is going to be improved at some point in the future.
It's not
with
gonna
the
be-
participation of the applicant and the city and neighborhood residents.
Well, we
I don't,
can certainly-
I don't
It's
understand.
placed on the developer,
I'm fully aware
not
of that,
upon
Buzz.
the
I'm-
city.
I'm fully aware of that. I want this to be captured in the language of us approving this
We can
without
include that in the
specific-
condition. It wouldn't be binding on Pete's, but it
No.
would be a reminder to us.
It acknowledges that there is a process that has to happen and who will be included in that process. We don't have the information, in my opinion, to make an informed decision about how to handle that easement in terms of lighting and security. Those issues have been raised tonight. If we approve this project without some acknowledgement of the need for that process, I'm not comfortable with it. I want to know either what those are, or I want it memorialized that somehow there's going to be a further review of that process.
Okay, we can include that.
So back to the financial, let's capture an issue that was raised that hopefully we have an agreement on. I don't have a problem with the change to the windows. It would be nice to retain the old windows, but I don't have a problem with it. Is anyone else concerned about the window change?
No.
I think the only other issue then is the financials, and if they're
Holden Street.
right,
Holden Street.
and whether there's some trade-off there. So go ahead, Art.
I feel that one of the conditions ought to be that the Holden Street parking be made available to the public in some form or another. I think that's important for the community. They don't need the parking, and it seems to me we should be able to work out a situation to protect them, but yet the public and the co-op people have adequate parking in the area.
What would you propose, that they grant that to the city so it's no longer their property?
Well, one thing we could do is, there's several suggestions. One is restrict the parking only to the public right-of-way by putting up some type of a planter or something, and therefore they wouldn't be they were concerned about people parking on their property and their indemnity. I don't share that problem, but I would think.
Well, the city would then have to spend money on improving the street, striping it, and putting a curb and gutter, and...
No, I wouldn't suggest that.
Your suggestion is that they just allow the public to park on their property.
Right.
Well, they've already explained that that's not possible for legal reasons.
I don't accept that.
So your legal opinion is that they don't have any liability?
Well, of course.
Well, let's ask the city attorney to weigh in on this issue.
They have liability, let me just say they have liability, but is there liable any more than, say, Powell Street Plaza Shopping Center, where the public parks on private property, and there's liability? There's always liability, but people deal with it.
Well, they're
That doesn't-
also
that doesn't-
making money at the parking on the Powell Street Plaza, and there's signs there stating that it's only for people that are shopping there, and the shops are paying rent
I hope
that's
Pete's-
paying for the insurance.
I
of
hope
it.
Pizza's a very profitable business. I'd love to.
Let's have
Well,
Wade.
you have to understand, it's already been said that they might not stay here if they can't get reasonable terms for this.
Go ahead, Michael.
Chair
we're
Martin.
going to hear from the city attorney now, guys.
Chair Martin, certainly regarding the legal and risk management issue that Pete's has raised, that is one that's essentially their call regarding their assessment of the risk management issues that they have to take into account when they allow folks to park on their right of way. And so what their risk management assessment was as to their legal liabilities regarding that, I really can't comment on. I haven't had, I certainly haven't been privy to those discussions, and I have no idea what sort of issues were taken into account when they came up with that analysis. So I'm afraid that, from the city's perspective, this is something that's something that they have the call on, and I really cannot provide you any comment on that.
Okay. Any other, so we've got a couple outstanding issues. One is parking on hold, and one is the financial. You haven't said anything yet, Gail. Did you have any comments or issues you wanted to raise?
Aside from the issues regarding the easement and that, it also seems to me that if there's going to be no improvements, I'm not sure what to do about the parking on Holden Street. I think that it does make sense that Holden is a public street and there should be public parking on it, whether it is by striping at the property line or whether it's by allowing some access along the pull-in parking as it happens in other places in the city. I'm not sure what's the way to go about that, but at the very least, if the applicant is not improving Holden Street with a sidewalk, there's a lot of opportunity to at least put some street trees in the planters that are existing there now and improve the landscaping along the frontage of the building. We have a big parking lot and a building that comes up to the lot line on the other sides, and there's an opportunity to get some green in on Holden Street before the rest of the street gets developed.
And are you suggesting a change to a condition around that? I guess the landscaping plan or frontage improvements? This is actually on their private property we're talking about on Holden, right?
Right.
Did you have any suggested, had you captured any of that in a change you wanted to see? Or not yet?
I hadn't captured that in specific language, but I'm sure it could be in design conditions and site standards and page 13A.
Didn't staff already say that they negotiated this point with Pete's, and that one of the trade-offs is that they wouldn't make them improve Holden, provided they would improve Horton?
I'm not
and
asking.
they would put in the path?
At this point, we have the path not being implemented. We have,
Plus, they're still there.
I'm not suggesting that they install curb, gutter, and sidewalk along Holden Street. There are existing planting areas that have some pretty shabby planting in right now and could be improved, so.
And then also when that frontage does get improved, is your suggestion that they be required to landscape the,
It says they're willing to plant Holden Street.
okay. Is your suggestion that they be required to landscape the frontage between the sidewalk and the building?
Yeah, I think
Right.
that would be reasonable if a sidewalk's in and you can't use it for parking anymore.
And there are some planter beds there now. It appears in this.
And I think we heard that the applicant was willing to landscape those planting areas along Holden. Did you see a head nod?
There are.
Can the applicant?
conferring.
Oh, you're conferring, okay. So we still have, did we reach a quote agreement on the approach to the pedestrian easement? I've heard that at least 1.5, maybe 2, wanted to see it built now. And I heard, Buzz, what was your?
My feeling is that they should grant the easement and pay the money.
And do it later.
And do it later so that it can be done, whatever fits in with whatever is going to be done.
The rest of the area.
Actually,
I would agree with that.
the city will do it
So we have
later.
a shift there.
So the city takes responsibility for what.
So it sounds like we have an agreement on how to handle the pedestrian easement, which is going to grant the easement, pay the fee, and make sure that there's a process that captures the details of the design that
Yeah.
includes the residents and
What I would-
security issues.
What I would suggest for that is, let's see, condition of approval.
Page 12.
Yes, thank you. On the bottom of page 12, condition Roman numeral 6A2, public access easement. We'll leave the first sentence as is. Prior to the issuance of building permit, the planning director, public works director, and city attorney shall confirm that the applicant has dedicated an east-west public access easement across the site on the northern 16 feet of the site. Then delete the rest of that condition and replace it with language that says that in addition, they will pay $100,000 to the city for future improvements to be done by the city, that no parking would be allowed in this easement area, that it should be planted with ground cover and some other appropriate landscaping, and that the city will follow a public process to design, construct, and operate the easement in the future, which will include Pete's and the neighbors and all other concerned parties, and will include lighting and security and other issues. And so I don't have all the language of that worked out, but basically the process the city would follow would be captured in that condition.
Good.
Is that what you
Does
want?
that sound acceptable?
Sounds okay.
There were a couple other changes. Did you capture those other changes,
Let's see.
Diana?
Yes.
That you can read back to us, please?
Where'd they go? On page, I figured on page 2, we could add H to say this is just the general, what is this approval section? And we could just add H. The owners of this property shall not be required to pay for placing utility wires underground on Horton Street unless such payment is required in connection with future Pete's improvements.
Okay. Does that sound acceptable to everybody? Okay. And there was another change?
And on page 13, public access walkway, in the middle of the page, C2, we can just scratch out applicant and put city. City shall maintain the public access walkway, including the path, surface, landscaping, and lighting, and shall keep the walkway clear for public passage. And then we can just take out that other sentence about it being closed.
Well,
But then since we're not building it now, maybe we don't need that.
I think I would delete all of the references to the public access easement
Past
Public
the
access walkway.
dedication.
in condition, let's see.
Because you've captured it under the landscape, the public access easement
Yeah,
condition.
so all the conditions on page 13 and 14 that are headed, no, 13, where's the other one?
Well, there's 13B2, 13C2, and I think there's some mention of it in the landscaping plans too.
Right.
So we take it out of all three of those.
Yeah, well, actually, I would delete B2 on
Mhm.
page 13, I would delete C2 on page 13, and under landscaping plan, I would say applicant shall submit a detailed landscaping and irrigation plan for Horton Street and ground cover or whatever else in the public access easement. So we do want to see what they're going to put.
Which
in there.
condition is that, Charlie?
It's
on which page?
7A2 at the bottom of page
Okay,
13.
got it.
And the landscape plan should include showing us what they're going to put in the easement area for, for the interim period.
And I'd like to suggest another revision. I would actually like the applicant to plant a couple of trees. I'd like you to meet the intent of the zoning code with regard to parking lots and parking lot improvements. I don't think it's very many trees, but I think from what we heard during our presentation, you had in the aisle width of your access, you had some flexibility there. You said it could be 16 to 20 feet wide, so I think you've got some room. I would like to see some planting that complements the future public access easement through there. So
Hey,
hopefully
sorry.
on the south edge of that 16-foot strip, you can put some, I don't care how wide it is, but it'd be nice to accommodate something that improves your parking lot, provides some shade, which is the intent of that zoning code requirement, and ultimately improves that public access easement when it gets built. So I'd like to see some landscaping that complements the 16-foot easement there. And you wanted to say something.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that we were clear. When I was talking about the 16 versus 20, I was talking about a driveway cut into the parking lot. However, I believe that we could find a way to plant some of the trees on that back side, on the north side of the parking area, as you're suggesting. They may wind up actually being in the pedestrian easement area, because then they, when the pedestrian easement.
What I'm
is ultimately-
suggesting is that the 16 feet be expanded to something more than that, so that there's room to not just plant the landscape trees, but to accommodate the path and the future improvements there. And I'm not saying necessarily a continuous strip. There could be planting wells or something else that achieves the requirement of the zoning code, still gives the number of trees that are required, and at least by canopy would contribute to that experience along the easement.
You mean expanded functionally in terms of planting,
Planting area, yes.
not that the easement would be expanded?
Right.
No.
It was my understanding this was an existing parking lot. Does that require new landscaping?
Well, it is being reconfigured, so it's...
The striping is being reconfigured.
And when we're expanding the parking lot into the building, there's a shed that's being torn off. There are other physical improvements that are being made. There's a new entrance into the building. There are changes that, in my mind, trigger applying this section of the zoning code. Otherwise, we're stuck with a parking lot that doesn't have landscaping, and in my sense is if this is going to be your ultimate configuration, you should be landscaping it and making it as attractive as possible
But
for your users as well.
It's not a public facility.
None of the parking lots that
Landscaping requirements don't just apply to public
Right.
facilities. But, Chair Martin, if I could just chime in here. By my calculation, I believe they have about 59 or 60 spaces in this external lot. And at 7.5, one tree per 7.5 spaces, that equates to 8 trees.
So it's not a huge consideration.
And I would suggest, I agree with basically with what you're saying, I don't think those trees in the parking that count towards this zoning requirement should be in the easement area.
Right.
Because in the future, when that easement is improved, then they won't have any trees in their parking lot.
Right.
So they need to be in the parking lot area. And that could be an expansion of the easement area, but wherever they are, those trees need to still be there after the easement is improved.
Good. Is there a majority of the commission that concurs with that?
Yes.
Okay. So that language then would be captured in the landscape condition?
Yeah, I think on the bottom of page 13, in landscape plans, it can say, prior to the issuance of building permit, applicant shall submit a detailed landscaping and irrigation plan for Horton Street, ground cover in the public access easement, and 8 trees in the parking lot.
Perfect.
And improve planting along in the
Holden.
in the existing planting areas on Holden Street.
And is staff comfortable not having a number for the check?
Oh, we had a
No,
number.
we said $100,000.
And there was an agreement to the $100,000.
They're nodding their heads.
Okay. And
No, we're not
that was
comfortable not
staff's-
having a number.
That was staff's suggestion, so staff is satisfied with that. Okay.
Yeah, but that's based on a detailed technical.
Okay. Are there any other outstanding issues
Cost
that I
estimate.
missed?
Parking.
Oh, the parking. Parking on
The-
Holden.
Do the Pete representatives want to react to the city attorney's comment about whether you're willing to allow public parking
Oh. Has your position changed?
since an hour ago?
I have conferred with the property owner, and the position has not changed.
So is there a majority of the commission that feels like we need to insist on public parking at that location?
Well, is it possible to do a low-level landscaping on your private property, and then the city can mark parallel parking on the street.
My sense is Pete's doesn't want to lose that perpendicular parking on Holden.
That is correct. We are willing to...
Because it's a substantial change.
Yeah, and we are willing to add new trees into the existing tree wells along Holden Street.
But what is that parking for? You said you have adequate parking.
No, they have code parking. That's not necessarily adequate
I
parking.
see. You know, as a longtime customer of Pete's, before there was a Starbucks, I'm disappointed that you cannot see to accommodate the public somehow with your parking. But if that's your decision, I guess I'll live with it.
But understand that that's going to happen in the future, that eventually that street will be improved. I think that my larger concern is not the parking, but the issue that was raised about forcing the pedestrian into the street to get behind those cars. It's basically what happens now, and we're approving something that continues to force pedestrian traffic into the street, which bothers me.
And could also be a liability issue, I would assume.
Right, certainly for the city. Did staff capture the suggested language that when Holden gets improved, that the applicant be required to landscape that frontage on their private property?
It's a future thing.
I don't think we heard that. Did you hear that?
It was suggested by Commissioner Donaldson, I
Oh,
think.
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed it.
Well, that would be an ongoing, I guess, because it's in the future. Which is on page 15, ongoing landscaping, we could add at the end. In the future, when the city
Makes
builds a
improvements to-
sidewalk on Holden, Pete's will landscape the area between the sidewalk and the building.
Right. Is that acceptable to Pete's? We're not expecting you to do the sidewalk or the curb or gutter or anything else. We just want the area landscaped so it doesn't sit there as an untreated strip.
Given that it is an untimed response and Pete's is a tenant as opposed to the owner of the building, I think that it needs to be structured that the landscaping will be a requirement to be installed as part of the conditional use permit, which runs with the property. So you want to...
So the property owner, not Pete's.
Well, yeah. I mean, it runs, this conditional use permit will run with the property. What I don't know is whether Pete's will be...
Who the occupant is.
Who the
No, that
occupant
makes
will be at
sense.
that time.
That makes sense. So I guess the last issue is the parking and how to handle it. And I guess I sense there's a bottom line that losing that parking right now is unacceptable. With the negotiations that have happened between staff and the applicant. It's an existing condition. If they were asking for something that wasn't existing, I would have a larger problem with it. And hopefully the city will move forward sooner than later. Can staff clarify whether with this project there's going to be a net reduction in available on-street parking, or is the available on-street parking not going to change with this application? There are improvements that are going to be made to Horton Street, so I'm just curious whether there's a net change in the available on-street parking.
The Horton Street improvements will reduce the amount of parking, but the parking is mostly used by Pete's.
Okay.
Because I believe people park head-in on Horton Street now.
Yeah.
Right? And they'll have to park parallel in the future. And the same thing on Park Avenue. That's not a result of this project. It's a result of the Park Avenue improvements that the city is doing anyway. But all that angle parking on Park Avenue will go to parallel in the future as well.
Okay. So I think we're ready for a motion, and I guess we'll let the parking issue get resolved by whoever makes the motion. So
I have one other
Whether it
thing.
carries.
I have one other thing that's just a general
Oh,
thing in terms
okay.
of our conditions of approval. I think we need to change our language that talks about street trees requiring sprinkler systems and just change it to irrigation systems. Everywhere where it says sprinkler systems in the conditions of approval, if you change it to irrigation rather than sprinklers, because sprinklers are not appropriate.
I just have one question.
Go ahead.
Charlie, is it possible that the city could require only parallel parking on Holden Street? so that they would not, and be parked only in the public right-of-way?
Yeah. It'd just be striped. It would have to be striped that way.
So therefore, we
Well-
could, and then that would become general public parking, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, I think that was one of the suggestions, was to require Pete's to basically landscape that area right now and not have any parking in it. And that would essentially force the parking to go out onto the street parallel.
That's what I'd be in favor of.
I thought that was a condition that you negotiated and was unacceptable.
Actually, it's something we didn't think of. It came up this week.
What we negotiated out was having them actually build curb, gutter, and sidewalk along the Holden Street side. And what we said is we'll just leave Holden Street the way it is right now. We didn't discuss any other options for Holden Street, such as just requiring them to landscape that parking area so that it can't be parked in.
But I assume the commission can change.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, if we wanna
You've
kill-
changed
we
a
wanna
lot
kill the
already.
deal,
You
we
can change
can't.
some more if you want
I
to.
guess the other point to make, though, Art, is if we force this parking into the street, it's going to be that much greater an impact on the surrounding neighborhood.
And
that
you won't-
parking
and
is
you
used
still won't
now.
have a sidewalk.
Right. So I'm not sure there's really a net
Oh, I
benefit
see.
with that approach.
There'd just be overflow parking
It
somewhere.
would force everyone who's parking there now to park on the surrounding street system. And I don't see a benefit to that.
Concede.
Okay.
Well, I would move approval with all those conditions that we've revised.
I'll second that.
So, did we want to go through them one more? I think you read every one of them.
Let me go through and just summarize if I could, to
Okay.
make sure we've got everything.
It's probably wise.
Diana, you can follow along and chime in here. Okay, page 2, condition Roman numeral 1H will be added to say they don't have to pay for undergrounding now in conjunction with this project, only in the future, in conjunction with some future project. Okay, so that goes away. Let's see. So skipping ahead to page 12. Roman numeral 6A2, public access easement. We've revised that to say that they will dedicate the easement now, give us a check for $100,000, put some ground cover in it, and the city will follow a public process to design it in the future. Page 13, we will delete condition B2 and C2. Also on page 13, Roman numeral 7A2 will revise the condition on landscaping plans to say they'll include ground cover in the easement area, 8 trees in the parking lot, and improve planting in the existing planting areas along Holden Street. Page 14 will replace the word sprinkler with irrigation, and anywhere else where sprinkler occurs with relation to trees. Let's see. Page 15, condition Roman numeral 7C1 under landscaping, that in the future, when the city builds the sidewalk on Holden Street, the property owner will landscape the area between the building and Holden Street. And that's
Great.
what I have.
And given how complicated the negotiations with the commission have been on the language of the conditions, does the applicant have any comment they'd like to make or concern? Or are these conditions acceptable?
I would request clarification on the last condition, that it be landscaped from the building to the back of sidewalk. We can't landscape the sidewalk itself.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yes,
Oh, why not?
we sometimes mean sidewalk when we say street, but it's not real clear.
You could put flower pots on it.
Okay, so we had a motion and a second, and we had a summary of the changes. With that, let's have a vote.
Commissioner Cardoza.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoff.
Aye.
Vice Chair Donaldson.
Aye.
Chair Martin.
Aye.
4 ayes, the application is approved. This decision can be appealed to the City Council within 15 days.
Congratulations.
Yay.
Next item on, well, it's now 8:35. This meeting is
Thank you.
not going the way we thought.
I thought this was going to be a short
Okay.
Yeah, let's speed it up.
Marriott automated parking at 555 Shellmount Street, and this is Maru's
Oh, that's right. Okay.
project.
Where are we on now? There we are.
Good evening, Chair Martin, members of the Commissioner. For those of us who've been parking for free at the Marriott Court when going to Bay Street, this proposal is going to bring that to an end. The project involves establishing a commercial parking use and installing pay gates and entry and exit gates. This is an overview of what is existing. You have shell mount here, and this is the driveway right here, and then you have a traffic circle, and you park anywhere all along. That's the existing situation. What they are proposing is to install gates here and here, and I'm going to put a view here, a close-up. So the way this will work is that they will install an entry gate right here. It'll be one lane, and then you would come in, park anywhere, and then exit through here, and there'll be two exit lanes. If you're coming in and you're not parking, you're just doing a drop-off, then you come in, drive through to the porte cochere, and then drive out again. The way this will work is that if you're going to be parking, you enter in. At the entry gate, there will be a card dispenser and a card reader. So if you're a hotel guest, then you'll swipe your hotel key and enter. And if you are a casual customer wanting to park here, you will push the button as you do in Bay Street Garage, and you'll get a ticket. And then you'll park freely anywhere in the parking lot. During exit, when you're exiting here, you can, if you're a hotel guest, then you wipe your car key, and that'll allow you to exit. And if you're there as a visitor, then you can either pay at the gate itself, or you can pay inside the hotel. There will be a cash machine where you can do that as well. The two exit gates is basically to facilitate quick egress of vehicles in case there is a lineup. At both the entry gates and exit gates, there'll be an intercom, so if something doesn't work, they can push for assistance, and there'll be one person in the hotel, within the hotel, who would be responding to that cry for help, so to speak. In terms of zoning, it's in a mixed-use zone, which does allow commercial parking use. And the hotel was given a use permit in 89-90, and as a condition of that use permit, the hotel requires to provide 164 parking spaces for the hotel use. The existing parking lot is 285, so it's well over 120 spaces, which they are hoping to allow other non-guests to use. To ensure that the hotel guests always have a parking, there is an automatic system so that every time the hotel guest is swiping their key, they can easily calculate how many hotel guests have parked, how many hotel guests exist, so that at no given time a hotel guest would be without a parking space. So if there is at some point a point of time where there are not enough spaces for the hotel guests, or there are not enough, or all the hotel guest spaces have been used up, then that will not allow a casual customer to get a ticket and park. In terms, there's no proposed construction or change in the existing building, so other standards are not applicable here. The entry gates are located about 220 feet from shell mounts, so the possibility of queuing up also is minimal. So in terms of a use permit, staff believes that the findings can be made. The second permit in front of you is design review. And what this installation will be is of gates and equipment like a ticket dispenser and the exit pay machine. The staff report should have colored renderings of the factory specifications. None of these structures are about 5 feet. They won't be prominently visible from shell mount or even from the court portiere. So with that, staff is recommending approval. Are there any questions? I would be happy to answer.
Was this generated by people parking there and going across the street to the movie?
That is correct. That was the motivation. I think the staff report gives an impression that the hotel guests would not be charged for the parking with this system. My understanding is that they will be charged for parking. Just to clarify, the zoning requires that the parking spaces be provided for a particular use. It does not call for whether that parking is to be free or or it cannot be charged.
Can you explain, Maru, how I understand there's an automatic system that assures that there's parking spaces for the number of hotel guests.
Mm-hmm.
How does the system inform non-guests whether there's available parking? If you see people queuing up and putting in their cards and you go and pull in and wait in line and then there's not a parking space, is there some kind of readout like there are at a lot of parking systems now that say 212 spaces available or 6 spaces available on this floor or whatever it is? Because I can foresee real issues with people lining up, waiting, and not understanding why they can't get in the parking lot if the people ahead of them get in and people behind waiting to get into their hotel space.
Right. Do we have...
Good evening. Good afternoon. Good evening. My name is John Henry. I'm with Marriott International, and this is Steve.
Go ahead and
Sanfilippo.
pull that microphone right up there. So
Sure. John Henry with Marriott.
And Steve Sanfilippo with McGann Associates, we're the parking vendor.
And specific to your question is whether or not guests would queue up because the lot would be full.
Know whether the people who are not guests who understand that there is public parking available, how are they informed about whether there's spaces available for them when there's guests coming and going?
The count system, the software, keeps track of both card access and daily ticket access. And at a certain point when the spaces are such that we have to reserve the spaces for card access, the dailies have taken up as much space as they can, the software lights a sign up. There's a sign at the entrance that says, lot full, guests only. So as they drive up, they would see the sign and they can continue around the circle. They would not even have to get into the lane.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Could you clarify where this sign will be?
The sign will be in front of the, I'm sorry, here we go. The sign would be post mounted on the front of the entry lane right here. And it's a LED bright sign, so in any type of situation, you're going to see it. It's the 2-inch letters, typically considered viewable by anybody with normal vision or corrected vision at a distance of at least 100 feet. So they would actually see that as they're making the turn if they glanced over there. Or if they're started to turn in, they would see it and could go around. In the same token, well, that's how it works with that. There's a sign that would tell them full, guests only. And the guests would know, and they would be told that there's always room for them, so they would use their cards in and out. But rather than have confusion, the guests only would tell them they can come in.
Is that sign shown in the application? I just want to make sure that what you're suggesting is captured in these plans that we have.
Is it in there?
Since what we're approving are plans that we have in front of us. And maybe you can point out where the sign is.
He says it's right on the entry gate.
It's I do not have a picture of that sign in here. Typically, that sign is included on the plans that we provide for the electrical permit, but I should have it for here. I don't.
Does staff have a concern not having seen them about the design review issue and?
No, I believe that I'll just make sure that it's there. I don't think it's going to be a big issue.
Great.
Can I ask you a question? Yeah, the owner or the owner's representative here, would it be a concern of yours that people could understand that the lot is full prior to entering that circle? I mean, having that sign on the corner so that they don't have to go in that circle, queue up, see the sign, and then come back out, creating that additional traffic, that additional waiting, et cetera, et cetera. So is it a concern of as the owner's rep, that
No, we
not that queuing not occur, so that
We anticipate that there will be, once we begin charging for parking, if allowed, that there would be much less demand on the parking spaces, and therefore there would be more availability and very few occurrences where it would be completely sold out.
So you think it's seldom that would ever be sold out?
I think it's seldom.
Uh-huh.
Are you going to charge as much as they do across the street, or?
For day parkers on an hourly basis, we are, but I think they max it out at 4 hours. Like I believe it's $1 per hour up to 4 hours. We're going to go beyond that 4-hour maximum for 8-hour guests, and then a special rate for overnight guests.
Thank you. Did you want to make a Maru, are you finished with your staff report?
Yes.
Okay. Did the applicant wish to make a presentation?
No, Maru did a great job. Just if
Great.
you have any questions for me, I'm available.
Great, thank you. With that, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to speak to this item? Maurice? Okay, we're seeing no one. We'll close the public hearing.
I move approval.
I'll second that.
Oh, did we have a comment? Nope. Staff's happy with it.
Okay.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Hoff and a second by Jeffrey?
Cardoza.
Oh, Cardoza? So let's have a roll call on this.
Commissioner Cardoza?
Aye.
Commissioner Germain?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoff?
Aye.
Commissioner Jeffrey?
Aye.
Vice Chair Donaldson?
Aye.
Chair Martin?
Aye.
6 ayes, the application is approved. This decision may be appealed to the City Council within 15 days.
Congratulations. So last item on the agenda, the Granite Expo at 4041 through 4065 Hollis
Somebody
Street.
might be here
And that's
for that.
another Maru. No?
No, this is Maurice.
Oh, okay.
I'm
I knew it
sorry.
was an M.
I'm hanging out.
I need to do more than just M's, I guess.
I told you Maru, I think. I made a mistake, sorry.
Thanks, Charlie.
In September of 2006, the Planning Commission approved the entitlements for the Granite Expo project located at the northwest corner of Hollis and 40th Street. And as part of this entitlement process, the Planning Commission required a condition of approval of the developer to relocate the existing mature street trees on 40th Street from the planning strip to a location adjacent to the curb. This requirement was recommended by the planning department, given that it would be a better urban design feature to have street trees next to the curb on 40th Street, and also because the H-Song project, which was approved adjacent to this site, had a similar condition of approval. The city's arborist has indicated it won't be possible to relocate these street trees. They're rather large. It would be very difficult to pick them up and try to transplant them. And he's recommending that in lieu of moving those trees, to plant 24-inch box-sized trees. In the case of the Granite Expo, the replacement value fee impacted by the replacement value of these trees is about $23,350. And the developer has indicated that his cost to relocate the trees to the curb line would be between $70,000 and $80,000, given the amount of work he has to do on the sidewalk, putting in an irrigation system, amending soil, and putting in the trees. In the urban forestry ordinance, there's a provision that the Public Works Director can waive a replacement value fee if the removal of the trees without the fault of the property owner. However, there's also a provision in the ordinance that allows the Public Works Director to defer this decision to the Planning Commission. The contractor who's been working on the project has been coming to us and saying, hey, this is very expensive, doesn't want to pay the replacement value fee, and I didn't want to make that call on my own, and I wanted to bring this back to the Commission. The condition of approval, as it's written, requires the replacement value fee, and if the Commission decides to change that requirement, then you'd have to change their condition of approval. Staff recommends waiving the fee, but I want to have your concurrence on that. There's also been some public letters written, one received from Brian Donahue, who's questioning why we're removing these trees. They're mature trees, they're in good health. They've been there for 18 years or so. There's some benefits to keeping those trees. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to the public. There's nobody here to speak from the Granite Expo, so
there
take
is
some questions for you.
Question to staff?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. What can we do to rescind this condition and just leave the trees where they are?
I agree.
Do we need to do that, or do we just supplement the previous condition with a new condition? How do we handle that?
That's what you do. You
Okay.
change the condition, and then you take a vote.
Okay.
I would support that.
I would too.
I move
Most
that
of the
we change
trees
the
along the
condition.
street are actually behind the sidewalk, I
The whole
noticed.
length of the street.
Yeah, that's
So
the way the street
we'd be
was
doing
designed.
something that's different from everything else.
Paul, you look like you want to really say something.
Well, actually, I want to hear from the people that I know have expertise in judging these trees and how much life do you think we have out of them? And is there something that we should make for when they die that the owner has to replace them at the curb?
Okay, let's open the public hearing. We've opened the public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to speak to this item? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Okay.
I can answer that question. I did speak with the arborist today, and he says the trees are in good health, but they could use some fertilizing and maybe some improvements to the soil to make them grow a little bit better. So what we might want to do in lieu of requiring them to take it out is maybe have the developer do some aeration to the soil, maybe put some better soil in there around the existing root system, so maybe the trees would thrive a little better.
And do some plantings the way they were going to have to
Possibly,
do around the tree well to the new trees anyway.
Right. I've actually written up anticipating your decision here. I wrote up a sample condition of approval. One thing I might want to note is there's an entryway that's going to go in from 40th Street, and there's an existing tree there that may be impacted by that one entryway. So if that tree needs to come out, we would have to follow the urban forestry requirement because it's a tree that would be coming out because of the development. We would charge them the replacement value fee for that.
They have a vehicle access on 40th?
I think there's an access point
No, I
off
don't
of
think
40th
so.
Street.
No.
No, it was just going to be an improved pedestrian
Right, plaza
entrance.
area.
Yeah, a little plaza
Pedestrian
area
area.
with some plants.
There's nothing, no access off of 40th?
No.
No.
Okay.
Unless they-
No
Are there-
vehicular access.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is
Yeah, it
there
was
an-
only for pedestrian.
Okay.
So did you want to read the suggested language to us?
Yes, the applicant shall be responsible to preserve the existing street trees on 40th Street and shall improve the soil conditions beneath the street trees as recommended by an arborist. Applicant shall also install rubberized sidewalk material in the existing sidewalk openings adjacent to each street tree as approved by the city engineer. I don't know if you're familiar with the sidewalks on 40th Street, but we have these little strange cutouts that were supposed to represent a portion of a tree well. And the trees are far enough away from the back of the sidewalk that we could fill those areas in, but we wouldn't want to use concrete. And they have some pervious rubber material that it's being used in some sidewalk areas that we could try out. We've never done it in the city, but it'd be a good chance to try something out like that.
Can't we just put DG in there?
That's another possibility, but typically you'd want to compact DG, and you don't want to compact any soil in the vicinity of those roots.
Right, but it's an
So-
existing condition that people walk around right now. Your concern is that someone's going to trip in that?
Well, it's been a tripping concern. I think it would just be nicer to have a nice straight walkway through there, and if we could do that without impacting the trees. Typically, you'd put a tree grate, but you can't put a half a tree grate in.
Right.
I think in this location, it would be a good, appropriate place to try out some of this rubber surfacing to allow the sidewalk be.
Yeah.
Jim, let it go.
I defer to our
Rubber
landscape
stuff. I'd rather
architect.
they have some plants sitting in there. I mean, how many people are going to be walking down that sidewalk, frankly?
I
Well,
think
we
the idea was
hope
to
many
encourage
over the
pedestrians.
years as we
40th.
pedestrianize the whole city.
That's right. Just fix up the landscaping. It was designed to
I mean,
be
that's fine. You
landscaped
don't-
that way,
I mean,
and it
that's
should
something
just
I
be
added, but if you-
landscaping.
What do you
They can
think,
walk
Gail?
around the landscaping.
I think having plants in there would deter people from stepping into them.
Okay.
Okay, the question is rubber or plants?
Right.
How about rubber
It's
plants?
the commission's call is that we have plants there now. It's easy to keep the plants, but it was something we
No,
thought
that
we'd try.
sounds good to
Well,
me.
I think the plants
Well-maintained plants.
Yeah, they need attention. So I think in addition to the soil amendment, I think that the additional condition needs to read as we've written in the current condition that they need to re-landscape it, and you need to approve it.
Okay, can we
And it better
That
look
right now
good.
is city-maintained
we
landscaping.
approve this change?
Any other comment? Was that a motion?
Well, and just to clarity, that one tree that will be replaced because of the development, they will pay the in lieu fee to
If it turns out
replace
that a tree needs to come out because of an
Right.
entryway,
So
they would have to
that
pay.
tree will have to follow the terms of
You
and
bet.
conditions of the
Yes.
ordinance.
I
Okay.
defer to Patty to make the motion.
Okay.
I move that we revise the motion to reflect what our Public Works Director has so indicated.
With plants rather than rubber.
With plants rather than rubber.
Oh, I thought it was
Except we
rubber
never had a
plants.
motion for the.
Yeah.
Did we have a motion for the?
Oh.
No, we just
revised conditions of approval?
We're
We
just
never-
supplementing. I thought what we were doing was just supplementing
We're
the previous.
revising the conditions
yeah.
of approval, right?
You are revising the conditions of approval to say that the trees are not coming out.
Right.
Correct. Right.
And they're going to landscape around it and put soil amendment and all the stuff
And-
like the
Yeah.
city engineers.
Because
Correct.
the current condition on page
With no rubber.
7
Rubberless.
3A, right, says that the plan shall include replacement of the existing street trees along 40th Street, and you're deleting that. part.
Right.
And the rewording would be, like I read, applicant shall be responsible to preserve the existing street trees on 40th Street and shall improve the soil conditions beneath the street trees as recommended by an arborist.
Correct.
And provide the landscaping.
And provide landscaping.
Do those trees have existing irrigation system now?
There's an existing irrigation system there, there's landscaping there, so do you want to improve or change the landscaping?
Yep.
Okay. And we can
Improve it.
add that as well.
Just like they were going to do in the new wells.
Okay.
Right. Make it pretty, because it doesn't look pretty right now.
It looks pretty weedy right now.
Yeah.
It's not being maintained now.
So we have a motion, is there a second?
I second it.
Okay. With that, motion by Jeffrey and second by Jermaine, let's have a roll call.
Commissioner Cardoza.
Aye.
Commissioner Germain. Commissioner Hoff.
Aye.
Commissioner Jeffrey.
Aye.
Vice Chair Donaldson.
Aye.
Chair Martin.
Aye.
6 ayes, the motion is approved to revise the conditions of approval. This decision may be appealed to the City Council within 15 days.
So, last item on the agenda is commissioner comments. Commissioner comments, go ahead, Paul.
I want to remind, I guess, this huge group that we have one more community meeting for the general plan update steering committee, or the community meetings for, to get community input. The first 2 meetings were well attended. I attended both of them. I won't be able to attend the one on Saturday, but it's from 9:30?
Doors open at 9:30, starts at 10.
Starts at 10 until 1
Yes,
at the police station on Powell Street, right?
that's correct.
Okay.
Thanks, Paul.
I just wanted to say I also attended the workshop on Wednesday night, and it was really great to see a fairly decent crowd turning out. And also, there were some of the students, members of the architecture club for Emory Secondary School, that attended the workshop and participated in the workshop and shared their ideas and their grand vision for the city of Emeryville. It was really great.
Buzz, did you have?
Yeah, I'd heard, Jim, that you're going to be running for city council. Is that correct?
What?
Councilman Fricke has filed papers.
Oh, yeah, well, that's to be disputed. No. It's not running for city council.
Well, he's filed papers to be your
Yeah, he's
fundraiser.
trying to guilt trip me into something that I'm not going to do. So for the public record, we'll make that clear.
I attended.
Thanks a lot, Buzz.
Where did this?
I was hoping that just stayed underneath some place.
Where did he get that?
Where did Buzz get?
Where did he get that?
Oh, it was
On the email?
no. It was discussed.
Well, we don't need to discuss that.
That doesn't matter.
You have a comment?
I just wanted to say that I attended the general plan meeting on Monday, and I thought it was very well done. A lot of good comments. I even restrained myself from making any
Yes, that was hard.
hard to do, but it was very well attended. I thought it was a good meeting.
Thank you.
You want? I attended the Monday meeting. It was really 180-degree change from that previous workshop. It was great that we're focusing in on areas of change in the city and not giving people the impression that the whole city is going to be leveled and we're going to have a whole new city. So I was also very pleased. I didn't stay the entire meeting, but it seemed to be very productive. I wanted to mention to the commissioners that I made a copy of this article on form-based code and the limitations to that out of the APA planner, which kind of talks about Bay Area in particular, and I thought it was interesting and useful, the limitations of form-based code, since that's the hype and the buzzword right now. And we're probably going to be seeing a lot of that in the next year as we update the zoning code. And also in this commissioner packet that we get, there's a discussion in here about Planning Commission annual reports, and it's something that I've been pushing to have, is this annual review where we talk about what we did and where we're going. And so I hope the rest of the commission reads that. It's pretty rigorous. I'm not suggesting we go there. I don't think we're a municipality that's large enough to require that kind of effort. But it's important that we keep track of where we are and where we're trying to go and the progress we make every year. So as part of this annual review that we made sure got into our procedures, it's something to think about at some point in the future when we turn into a city of 20 or 50 or 100,000 people.
Staff
Some
get-
people may prefer.
Did staff get a copy of that? Since we're not commissioners, we don't
you're
get the
welcome to have
commissioner
mine.
newsletter.
No, you're welcome to have mine. Any other comments? With that, we will adjourn the meeting at 9:01. That's pretty good.
Hey, I was